we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if I can ask Madam City Clerk Carrillo to do the roll call.
Yes. Mayor Rochelle Arismendi.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Denise Delmar.
Present.
Councilmember Jean Goss.
Here.
Councilmember John Harabedian.
Here.
And Councilmember John Capocha.
Here.
All present.
Great, thank you. And if we can ask everyone to please stand, and I'll ask Councilmember Harabedian to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I'll do this very quickly. It's Advent season. Advent starts on December 3rd, and I just wanted to read a quick blurb about Advent. The word Advent comes from the Latin and means coming. Its purpose is to look forward to the coming of Christ to earth. It was a season that focused on waiting. So Advent means something new is coming, the dawn of a new and better era. This is really what Christmas season is all about. It's a celebration of the advent of a new era. God broke into time and space and entered our world. So hopefully we keep that in mind as we enter into Advent and enter into Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harabedian. Now I will ask our Madam City Attorney if she can report out on closed session, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The council met in closed session this evening with the city attorney to receive a briefing on a matter of potential litigation. Direction was provided, no action was taken. And the council also began the performance evaluation, the initial performance evaluation of its city manager. And that will probably be continued.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, now we have the approval of the agenda.
Mayor, staff would ask council to pull item 1761. I erred in including it as council had already adopted a resolution addressing it.
Okay, thank you. Other than that, do we have any modifications to the agenda and or a motion?
With that change, I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda is mayor and city council reports. Do we have any reports?
Nothing from me.
Nothing for me.
Just quickly, I did attend with some of my colleagues here the business walk with Senator Anthony Portantino on Saturday. And just a big shout out to Senator Portantino for coming to Sierra Madre. I'm really impressed with him. He's always been a good friend to Sierra Madre, comes to events here all the time. And I feel that that's really helpful to us because any one of us can call him and talk to him about any issue we have here. So, but it was really, really nice. Just got to visit some of the downtown businesses with him and makes me again appreciate just how special Sierra Madre is going into some of our little shops.
Yeah,
Okay,
ditto.
thank you.
I have nothing else to report. Ditto.
Okay. Just to report on a couple other community events. We had our, I think most of us attended the Women's Club's prayer breakfast a few weeks ago, and always the best quiche and the recipe that they don't want to disclose. But it was a really great turnout, so thank you to the Women's Club for hosting that again. I think it was I want to say it's something like the 43rd? 42nd, 43rd. So it's a great way to bring in the holidays. And also want to recognize the city volunteers, city staff, and the chamber and other sponsors for our winter village. I had the opportunity to ride in with our princesses for Sierra Madre Rose Float, and you'll all get an opportunity to meet them also with Santa and to light the Christmas tree and to ride down sleds, and it was a really nice turnout. I think Channel 7 came out also and did a piece on that, and I had quite a few friends and family email that video clip to me, so it was great to see that. Okay, we will move on, and the presentation of the Sierra Madre Rose Float princesses are next on the agenda.
Thank you, I appreciate it, and I appreciate this opportunity to present the court from the Sierra Madre Rose Float Association. This is our 86th year in the parade, and our float this year is Chivalry. There's a rendering over there, and each of the council members have a postcard and a pin from our float. We appreciate your support year-round for the association. Our princesses are chosen by a group of three three individuals from outside the city, so presumably with no biases. They are Sierra Madre residents, 15 to 17-year-olds with at least a B average, and can be either boys or girls. And this year we had one male applicant, but as you can see, he was not in the top four. And I would like to now turn this over to them. Each of them will introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about the float.
Good evening. My name is Petra Scher, and I am both honored and excited to represent the city of Sierra Madre as one of the royal court princesses. My family and I have lived here ever since I was born, and my younger sister Danica and I have attended the Sierra Madre schools from preschool to 8th grade. Being born and raised in Sierra Madre, I feel that it will always be a big part of me and who I become. I'm currently a junior at Pasadena High School. I'm involved with a few clubs as well as the Orchesis dance team and soccer team, balancing everything with a full load of AP classes. My dance team, in addition to performing at football and basketball games, competes in hip-hop, contemporary, and lyrical dances. We even got a chance to perform at the Staples Center for halftime, and that was really fun. Besides dancing, I play the piano, the ukulele. I enjoy hiking with my dog Tucker and texting way too much. Over the years, I have participated in many of our community's annual events, such as the Wisteria Festival, the Mount Wilson Trail Race, Friends of the Library Alverno wine tasting, and the 4th of July Parade. Several years ago, I became a teen history docent for our city. We met at the library to learn about the history of Sierra Madre, and then went on to public events to share our knowledge. This past summer, I traveled to Costa Rica with an organization called Global Leadership Adventures. We volunteered in 2 small villages, building sidewalks, planting and fertilizing organic coffee trees, and even attending some Spanish classes. I hope to volunteer again next year, as the experience was truly life-changing. As I look forward to becoming a senior and graduating from high school, I continue to hope making a difference in people's lives, but not only through community service, but through hopefully pursuing a career in the medical field. But right now, I just want to focus on being a Sierra Madre princess and enjoy what this once-in-a-lifetime experience will bring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emily Verdeen, and I'm currently a senior attending Alverno Heights Academy. I participate in numerous activities around my campus. I'm the head of hair and makeup in the theater department, and I also played a lead role in my spring musical of Hairspray. I also play a role in our student government as Congresswoman, contributing ideas and passing bills to better improve our student body. I feel a strong sense of community in Sierra Madre, especially as I take the bus to school every morning, greeting my locals at Starbucks and at the bus stop. Aside from my responsibilities, I'd like to tell you a bit about myself. Films, especially the art of directing, help inspire my artistic abilities to come alive into a work of art. Some of the familiar directors that I love are Steven Spielberg, Quentin Tarantino, and James Cameron. Their films give me goosebumps with their eye for cinematography and the characteristics that the actors possess. Another thing I love is to go vintage clothes shopping with my mom. Not only am I saving money, but I'm also finding pieces that boost my self-confidence and individuality. In my family, I have 3 older brothers, Brian, Chris, and Alex, and I have a cat named Kat, a dog, Lily, and a horse, Bodie. I don't get to see Bodie often, but when I do, it's a very therapeutic experience for my mom and I. When I can, I also love to visit the Pasadena Humane Society to give company to the animals as well. After high school, I hope to take advantage of all the opportunities in my hands and taking advantage of film and studying abroad. I'm mostly interested in directing and screenwriting while focusing on other aspects of film production. I've always felt like a small-town girl in Sierra Madre, which has been a good thing, but standing with you today, I feel I truly represent the qualities of a Sierra Madre princess. I'm looking forward to developing new relationships with everyone a part of the new organizations and clubs like you all. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emma Allen, and I am 17 years old and a senior at Pasadena High School. I am currently taking 4 AP classes and am in the Graphic Design and Printmaking Academy at my school. One of my favorite things is animals. Although they're a big responsibility, the love they always give in return is worth it. I love my pets. I have 3 cats, a dog, a frog, and a rabbit. My rabbit is named Captain Jennifer Wiggles, and she is a very strong personality. Sometimes I'm not sure if I own her or if she owns me. One of my cats is a little black kitten named Timmy. He had fallen down a 20-foot hole and was stuck there for a couple days before being pulled out by the Smart Animal Rescue Team. Timmy is okay now and has become quite the playful kitten, especially at 2 in the morning when I'm trying to sleep. My dad's side of the family has lived in Sierra Madre for 5 generations. Every summer, I volunteer at the Sierra Madre Public Library. Because Sierra Madre is my home, I think it's really important to give back through community service. I have also participated in the Halloween window painting competition every year since 3rd grade. In 2015, I won the Sierra Madre Youth Service Award because of my community involvement. I had volunteered at my school, church, as a teen docent in Sierra Madre and in the Fenyas Mansion in Pasadena. I think community service is important, so I have not stopped volunteering since then. Since 2016, I have attended the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Seminar in Los Angeles and the Hugh O'Brien World Leadership Congress in Chicago. At those seminars, I participated in community service and leadership workshops. For example, I was part of a group that cleaned up a park in Chicago by repainting benches and picking up trash. More recently, I attended a 3rd leadership seminar at Freedom's Foundation in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. At this seminar, I learned about the processes of American government. Next year, I plan on attending Pasadena City College and studying art. After that, I would like to transfer to an art college to focus on illustration. As a Sierra Madre Rose Princess this year, I am very excited. I'm not so excited about getting up really, really early on New Year's Day, but I'm sure the ride on the float will be worth it. This is very different from what I am used to doing, and I'm looking forward to a very happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Amy Stapenhorst, and it's not rare to see me at the Sierra Madre Rose Float Barn during Deco Week. Since I was 10, I have spent in total about 200 hours working on the float, gluing carnations to a giant teapot, placing poppy seeds under a canoe, and helping out-of-state volunteers learn how to vial roses. Working on the float makes me feel connected to my Sierra Madre community, whether it's meeting new people or reconnecting year after year with old friends. I grew up in Sierra Madre with my parents, older sister, and 2 very energetic cats. I attended Sierra Madre elementary and middle schools, then transferred to Westridge School for Girls, where I am currently a junior, enjoying advanced English and history classes. Though I love cooking and creative writing, the activity I am most passionate about is theater. I take acting, dance, and voice lessons consistently and have performed in over 17 shows. My first show was Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, right next door in Memorial Park when I was 7, and I never thought my connection to Sierra Madre would lead me to doing my first professional show at Sierra Madre Playhouse last winter. For the past 2 years, I have attended summer theater intensives at college conservatories. I've learned circus skills, written plays, and taken master classes, among many other things. Currently, I'm gaining a different perspective on theater by making my directorial debut directing a play called Almost Maine this winter at my school. Directing allows me to express my creative freedom and learn how to be an effective leader while allowing the actors to bring their own choices to their characters. I really love this Sierra Madre community, and I try to give back as much as possible. I'm part of a teen service group called Interact. I've volunteered at the public library over the summer and am vice president of my senior high youth group at church. I'm completing my 11 years as a Girl Scout this year, with my Gold Award, where I'm going to teach after-school acting classes to elementary-aged kids who wouldn't have access to them otherwise. I also serve as a service representative for my grade, where I do community outreach, present about different nonprofit organizations, and help run fundraisers, the most recent being for the natural disasters that have affected our country. I'm so honored and thrilled to represent Sierra Madre and this float, both which are so dear to me, and I really look forward to meeting new people, reconnecting with old, and I wonder who I'll be placing limes on the dragon with this year. Thank you.
So first, I'd like to recognize Attitude Dress Shop in town for providing these outfits that these girls are wearing and their continuing support for the float. Our float is approximately 42 feet long, 30 feet high, 18 feet wide, and we'll have a lot of animation with the head on a swivel that will be able to interact with the crowd. We will have a camera so the animator in the float will be able to move the head accordingly as the crowd reacts to the float. In addition, the tail will wag, the wings will flap, and the knight will be looking up and down at his bandaging of the dragon's paw. And we would encourage everybody to come out and help decorate the float. We have our website, which is smrosefloat.org, and in there's a link to our iVolunteers site where you can sign up for various shifts, and we'd appreciate everybody's help. Thank you.
Great.
Can you, Dave, can you donate through the website, or if people are going to donate money, not just their time, where do they send the check, or how do they
Send
do
it to P.O. Box 603 in Sierra Madre 91025. We do not have a link to donate on our website or bring check or cash back up to the
should really
barn.
do that. Try to maybe set up, I think you'd raise a lot more money with that.
I appreciate that, and I will ask my son, who's been helping me with the website, to see if we can add that feature as well. I think that's a good idea, and I noted when I went looking at other of the self-built floats, a couple of them do have direct donation access from their website.
Thanks. Thank you. I just want to thank the Sierra Madre Rose Float Association for your work throughout the year. I know it's not just at this time of year, but not that we need to be competitive, but it would be great to get another trophy this year. But just want to thank you again for all of your work. And also thank the princesses for your service and for your representation of our city. We look forward to seeing you on that float on New Year's. I even asked if I could be on it. They're like, no politics. So I did put it, I threw my hat in, but I was denied. But I would like to ask if—
Gladly have you on the 4th of July.
4th of July, we'll take it. So if I can ask the princesses to come up, I know I wanted to make sure that we had the picture this year. We want to make sure we capture that, and ask the council to come up also, please. And I think they're all taller than me, if I recall from Saturday. Turn me up.
Congratulations, guys. Have fun.
Okay. Our second presentation for the evening is in recognition of our retiring Sierra Madre Police Sergeant Ruben Enriquez, and if I can ask Chief Ortiz to make his way to the podium, please. Nice stash there, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. You see the facial hair. You'll see it in Sergeant Enriquez. You've seen a lot of facial hair for almost a month. We have 2.5 days left.
Oh, I gotta get
It's
on
part
that.
of the No Shave November. It's raising funds for cancer awareness, and we've almost met our goal. So I'm real proud that the police department and the fire department work together to wear this facial hair and get people to pledge money on the No Shave November website. So hopefully we can find a cure someday, somehow. But I'm here today to talk about, it pains me because the gentleman I'm about to speak about is a pillar, not only of the community, but a pillar of our police department. After 25 years of providing service to the community and being a member of our police department, my senior sergeant, Ruben Enriquez, has decided to retire. And last Wednesday was his last day. And we will never replace him, I'll tell you that. We will never replace him. We have an employee that's working for the city for 25 years, dedicated, humble, skill sets, I mean, so many I can't speak of. He leaves with institutional knowledge. I shared with Ruben that it's all of our dreams to retire with health, and he has his health. It's all of our dreams to retire with good looks, and he has his good looks. And it's all our dreams to retire with a full head of hair, and, well, 2 out of 3 is good. So, Ruben, I ask you that you stand up. This is my senior sergeant, Ruben Enriquez, a friend, a colleague, someone who you could depend on 24/7, 365 days a year. We were blessed to have you on loan from your wife and your family for 25 years. We know that those calls came all day, all night, but we're glad that we can give you safely back to them. So I can't tell you how much we are going to miss you, but I would like you to just to kind of introduce your family that's here now.
Absolutely. Mayor, council members, good evening. I'd like to introduce my family, starting with my wife. 39 years, we just celebrated.
Wow.
Congratulations. Guadalupe. My daughter, Cecilia, she's a musician, singer, songwriter, composer, and she just recently released one of her latest new albums.
Nice.
She's our artist. My son, who decided to follow under my footsteps. He is a 4-year veteran of the San Gabriel Police Department, also field training officer, Avelino. Along with the family, my immediate family, my mom. I gave you those gray hairs, by the way. Unfortunately, due to my dad's health, he wasn't able to be here tonight, but he is with us in spirit, and he is at home thinking of us. Also, my brother's not here. He had other obligations. My sister, Veronica, where are you? Over here. There you go. Raise your hands. My sister, Elizabeth. My brother-in-law, Carlos.
Do you want to share anything, or we have a proclamation that the mayor's going to give you? But do you want to share anything now?
Well, I tell you, this
Come
is.
speak over here.
I didn't have a speech prepared, but I think I'm going to go off the speech. I started out early with my retirement look, so I'll put it out. It is with great honor that I'm here tonight in this event. And believe me, this was not an easy decision for me to make. Sierra Madre has really been my home away from home. I turned Sierra Madre into, again, the people that I met, the people that I work with, I consider them part of my family. It's a great organization, and you know, this is a decision that's taken me over a year to make, but it wasn't a decision that it came easily. I think all of this wouldn't have been possible, me being here, without the understanding, the patience, and the blessing of my family. For many years, my wife, I had to plead with her that this is the career that I wanted, and it took a long time for me to convince her, and I'm glad she did. My mom was a different story. So. Also like to take this opportunity to recognize Chief Joe Ortiz and Captain Donna Kaysen, who's not here, and all my past chiefs for their leadership, their guidance, their inspirations, so that I can be the best person that I am in my position. Someone told me that retirement is bittersweet. I had to stop and think about that, but it's so true. On one hand, I leave behind the work that I love, the people that I've worked with, the men and women of the Square organization, and this beautiful community. On the other hand, it's retirement is about relaxing, fishing, golfing, all the things that I don't do. But I plan to someday. Most importantly, I think retirement is the time, at least in my time, that I will be able to spend the time with my family, which, like Chief Ortiz said, been away for many years, especially on some of the holidays. Police work is a profession that we work 24/7, and that means that we're probably working the weekends, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Father's Day, Mother's Day, which I missed a few, but it was all worth it. If I was to do this over again, many times what we do in life, we think about what we did and say, you know, if I was to do things over, I would change things. I would not change it. I would come back and do exactly the same thing I did. I love this community. I feel thankful for having the opportunity to work with these men and women, the police department. They all have one goal, is to keep this community safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sergeant, I am going to ask if you can just go back to the podium. I will ask our council again to take a quick picture, and we have a recognition certificate for you.
They're up here.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll just say a few words. I do want to thank you for your service. I didn't realize it was 25 years, and that is a long time that the family allowed you to be on loan to us. So it is nice to be able to give you back. But you have been like family here, and I will miss seeing your face in your uniform, because I'm used to seeing you around town. But we are very thankful for your service, and we wish you the best in your retirement.
Right in front.
The tall guys are always in the back.
Thank you. Send us pictures. And come visit.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you. And thank you for all visiting us.
Bye-bye.
I know. I'm just so used to seeing him in uniform here.
Retirement parties on Thursday?
Yes. I have to apologize. Are any of you going to make it?
I'm going.
I have it on my calendar.
Represent us at 1:30.
Oh, is it that?
I won't be able to attend.
Where's it at?
I'm not sure.
At Park House?
Yep.
Oh, that's easy.
So, Director Reynoso, not such an exciting presentation as the last two, but I'm sure you'll thrill us and wow us.
Do we have a certificate for him?
We can take pictures with you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I bring before you a water conservation update. It's been a while. A couple of topics that I'd like to talk to you about. The first one, groundwater, current groundwater levels, our spreading operations, an update on leaks, and I'd like to finish with the conservation video that was produced by the city of Monrovia. And I think that you can, anytime you hear the city of Monrovia, you can insert city of Sierra Madre, because most of what is in the video holds true for Sierra Madre as well. We'll start off with groundwater levels. This is a year-long graph, and we've seen this in the past. Oops. And this up here is a static water level, and down here is when we're pumping. So this is what we call the drawdown. If we look, last year in November, we were at about the same rate as where we're at now. And that's kind of our goal. We see here that we had an average year of rainfall, then we had entered our peak season, a little bit of a dip. We started spreading water, and the water level started to rise again. And we're at about 5 feet higher at this point compared to where we were at last year. Again, meeting our goal of maintaining the groundwater aquifer and showing signs of improvement when groundwater aquifers across the region are continuing to decline. Our spreading operations. We had an average year of rainfall for Sierra Madre, about 26 inches, and we were able to divert just under 1,200 acre feet from Big Santa Anita Dam. Or in years past, with an average year of rainfall, we've been able to divert up to 3,000 acre feet. The Division of Dam Safety made some changes to the dam that prohibit the amount of water that can be stored behind the dam, and that's affected the amount of water that we can spread. As the years go by and they continue to make improvements, we hope that the amount of water that can be diverted will be increased. We were able to divert about 350 acre feet from the local dam, and we imported about 1,000 acre feet from the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. So we still have about 1,500 acre feet that we can import from the district, but we're going to wait until after the rain season, hoping that we have another at least average year of rainfall, so we can spread water that's least expensive. So total this year we've spread 2,500 acre feet. 2,500 acre feet should show about a 12-foot rise in the groundwater aquifer, and that's exactly what it did this year. Leaks for this year, we're at about the same rate as last year. So last year we were about 425 leaks during this period. The difference is that last year we tracked the number of holes that we dug. This year we tracked the number of Band-Aids that we placed on the main. So what I mean by that is sometimes we'll dig a hole and we'll find 2 or 3 leaks inside that hole. So we placed 3 clamps on that main. So we're tracking the number of clamps that we've installed. So the actual number of holes that we've dug in the city is considerably less, but we wanted to make sure that we tracked how many repair clamps we were installing on our main. Our top 10 leaker list, we're 50% done. Last year we did Skyland, Michelinda. This year we completed Canyon Crest. This week we completed Manzanita and Sierra Place. Manzanita is getting paving done, should be wrapped up tomorrow. So that those 2 projects those 2 streets are complete. We have 18 additional water mains in design. We hope that those designs will be done before the fiscal year, and we still have $300,000 that we can invest for those 18 main lines that still need to be replaced. That list is going to be fluid. We have a good idea of which main need to be replaced, but if one main starts having more leaks, then that main line is going to be prioritized. So this is the video that was produced by the city of Monrovia. And again, you can insert Sierra Madre anywhere you hear city of Monrovia.
In April 2017, Governor Brown proclaimed that the drought in California was over. But while that may be true for most of the state, that just isn't the case for us here in the San Gabriel Valley. Most of the San Gabriel Valley, including us here in Monrovia, get our water from the underground aquifer known as the main San Gabriel Basin. And based on current groundwater levels, we are currently still in the middle of a very serious drought condition. Even though California as a whole experienced record rain and snowfall during this past winter season, here in the main San Gabriel Basin, we only had what is considered to be a slightly above average year of rain. That average year of rainfall was not able to reverse the damage from the past decade, where our region experienced the most devastating drought in recorded history. Unless we are able to get more water into the ground, it is likely that 10% of all water production wells in the main San Gabriel Basin, including water production wells in Monrovia, will go dry by the end of 2017. If that happens, there may be widespread water shortages throughout the region. The serious drought situation pushed the main San Gabriel Basin Watermaster to assess every water purveyor in the region, including Monrovia, with a new water resources development fee. This water fee will be used to purchase and import water from outside our region into our aquifer. Implementing this plan will cost more than $100 million. The cost of this new Watermaster assessment means that water in the main San Gabriel Basin is about to become more expensive. But the plan will also ensure that when we turn on the tap, water will still flow out. Even though the situation is dire, there are many ways for Monrovia residents to help alleviate our water shortage. By making small changes in our everyday routines, we can all make a difference. To learn more, please visit our website, www.monroviaconserves.org.
So I think what's important to take from this video is to realize that we've been doing this for the last 2 to 3 years. We started importing water in 2015. We actually shut our wells off in 2013 and let the groundwater aquifer recover naturally. And it came up, I think it was 40 feet in that year. Other communities in this region are now starting to experience what we went through in 2013. It was just a matter of time, but I think that we're ahead of the curve now. Our groundwater basin is no longer declining. It's actually, we're able to sustain groundwater levels, and we have plans to hopefully continue to build it. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Do we have any questions for Director Reynoso?
Yeah, but one thing is we're not pumping our previous allocation that we had at the 40-foot or 500-foot level. So we're not our allocation from the aquifer is less. And I think it's important to note that. So that difference between what we used to pump every year and what we're pumping now is being made up with imported water.
Correct. So our current adjudicated right is 940 acre feet, and our demand is about 2,000. So we import 1,000 acre feet, put that in the ground, recharge the groundwater aquifer, so the net extraction is 940 acre feet.
It's going to be many years before we get back to the 500-foot level to pull our full allocation out. Yeah.
If we continue to get below average rainfall, it's going to take many years.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Our water district houses its water down there in the main basin, right?
Correct.
So it's not at risk for what's going on here with the wells running dry, and we're good.
So our district is charged with importing water and providing replenishment water. As cities have a need, they will provide that water to the cities. In years when there's surplus water, like this year, they can import that additional water and store it in the main basin and provide it to the member agencies when needed. So right now, the only threat that we have right now is there's an invasive species called the quagga mussel, and what happens is that mussel attaches itself to screens and pumps, and it can compromise the infrastructure. So water deliveries have been kind of put on hold until they can find a solution for that. That's really the only barrier right now to importing water that the district has. So they haven't really been able to meet the full potential of water deliveries because of that problem. And we're just waiting for the state and for the county to give the green light for them to be able to resume importing water.
So the 100 million is going to be assessed to other people who are using the main basin, but we're okay because we're...
Correct. Our district is not imposing any groundwater recharge assessments. That's only for producers out of the main San Gabriel Basin.
This may be a silly question, but so the spreading of the imported water was a good thing.
That was a great thing.
Yeah.
It really has saved Sierra Madre.
And we could have done it sooner, but I know we were just a little concerned as to, a little apprehensive about it.
The connection to, the district connection that allowed us to import water was established in 2013. So we took that water directly into our system for 1 year. And after that 1 year, we determined that the best solution for Sierra Madre would be to take that water directly into the ground and replenish the groundwater aquifer.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. And it looks like there are no other questions. Okay, thank you, Director, for the presentation. Okay, now we are coming to public comment. If we have anyone in the audience that would like to comment on items that are not on the agenda, you can please come up to the podium, and you have 3 minutes. And if you can please state your name and address.
Hi, Carol Canterbury, 46 Victoria Lane. First off, I want to thank you guys so much, and Chris Cimino, I'm sure he's sick of hearing my voice, but he saved me, all of you did, this weekend. It was a real big success. It was a lot of people, and it was perfect, almost perfect. If it would have been a little bit cooler, I would have been a little happier, but it was really, really great. So I want to thank you again. But what I did is every year we have Citizen of the Year, and then we have our award ceremony. And this year things are just a little bit different. And with this person, it was hard to get this person because they're never at home. Usually when we announce Citizen of the Year, it's in a more private area. But these people don't stay at home. And they are notorious for constantly volunteering, and they have been for many, many, many years. They have been involved in CERT. They have been involved in the first class for the police volunteer, which I was part of, the very first class. And they're really difficult because it's not like they stay home watching an SC game, drinking a cup of tea. So, without further ado, see, in this way they can't run and hide. And that's why I was texting you. If anyone has a camera, my person that was supposed to be here didn't come.
Sure.
So we are Citizens of the Year.
That's right. They usually do that, and they surprise them.
And I honestly did think it would be funny just to choose one and let them fight to see.
So thank you for that. And again, December 7th, for those of you that did not hear, is our Sierra Madre Honors. But I did forget they do a surprise for announcing that. So congratulations, Acorns.
Acorn.
Both.
Alcorns. And I know Carol listed some of the things that you do, but I know it's not all inclusive of everything you do. So I think it's extremely well deserved, and we look forward to continue honoring you on that day. So congratulations and surprise! Okay. Is there anyone else that has a public comment that is not on the agenda? And if you can please state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Carol Parker on Mariposa. I really have to ask you, Mayor, first of all, because friends said we better ask. I have safety concerns about the new library, the old, the new, not anything about what's on the agenda. Should I wait or can I? It's just safety.
I'm not sure. I'm actually going to look around and look at our Madam City Attorney.
I
would
would
it
go
be
ahead
on
if you wanted
to.
now? Yeah, because it's not
on the agenda.
Yeah, that's a survey.
No.
Okay,
It's not
that's
the
a survey
survey
issue.
itself.
Yes.
Go
Okay.
for it. Okay. So I have some safety concerns about what's supposed to be new. I go to the pool a lot, and so I drive in that driveway. There's 2 entrances and there's 1 exit. So I'm concerned about the traffic. I'm concerned about a welcoming entrance that's similar to the pathway at the present library, where it's really huge and mothers with strollers and children running around like children do, and they're safe in that space. I don't know, I can't imagine the safety at the proposed, and I just want to know if this has been thought of. I realize you can't answer this. If this safety issue been dealt with, because safety is priceless. So that needs to be looked at. I go down there and I look since this proposal was brought up, and I walk around and think, I don't know how this is going to happen. So we need to be able to have, I believe, children and families go into our library like they do now, like they do in Arcadia, like they do in Pasadena, like they do in other cities where I've gone to the library. And it's a huge entrance for everyone, and there's no concern about traffic being anywhere around. So that's a big concern. And it's got to be, I think it's got to be not moved and keep where it is, but that's beside the point, because that seems safer to me. The other thing is the walk. I don't know how far, because I'm odometer, pedometer, I don't know what that thing is called on a computer car anymore, but the distance between Baldwin Avenue and the library, and the difference between the distance between Mountain Trail, because that's the second stop sign, and the pool, and the narrowness of the sidewalks and the familiarity of the residents to have children walking down the street, as opposed to the familiarity of the city and businesses to walk from approximately Baldwin to the library. I think that that's something that needs to be understood, taken in. I'd like to know the difference. Have they done the difference in price? And there will be parking on the street in front of the Yak pool, which there already is. So I'm really concerned, because I look at that and think, just coming out of the pool, there's a lot of little children, and they're with their parents and they're holding hands, but there's going to be more, because there's activities for children that are more and different. So I'm just kind of concerned, because it kind of scares me.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments. And I just want to underscore the fact that decisions have not been made on the library, and that's part of the discussion that'll come up today in terms of the survey. So thank you.
Hi, thanks. Barbara Lee, since it's public comment and it's not dealing with the survey. I'd like to apologize. The last time I was up here, I'd like to apologize to Don Watts. I think Marianne was sitting out here. I said I really liked the design, what they were planning down at the swimming pool for the library. But my mistake, I didn't have all the information in front of me. And so I'd like to say I'm supporting library stay where it is. And fiscally, what can be done just for the library, not a community center, to be repaired. The last time I thought all the information that I had was in front of me. Not so. I think we still have a long way to go. I don't believe in selling off public land, and that is part of Sierra Madre, that old building. So I'm supporting staying where it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment on items that are not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go ahead and move on the agenda. Now we're up to action items. We have 4 items on consent calendar. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, the items on tonight's consent calendar are A, adoption of Resolution 1760 of the City Council of the City of Sierra Madre approving certain demands. B, second reading of Ordinance 1390, Municipal Code Text Amendment 1705, amending Chapter 8.18 vacant residential property registration requirement. C, approval of amendment to solid waste contract regarding environmental fee. D, consideration of Resolution 1757, modifying part-time hourly wages and adding 2 new full-time positions to the City of Sierra Madre classification plan and salary matrix.
Okay, thank you. Bring this back to council to see if we have any questions for the city manager on any of the items on consent calendar. A, B, C, or D?
I just have one on D. Mr. City Manager, could you explain a little bit about the position that you're creating, customer service lead and the customer service division?
Certainly. So the plan for the city as we move forward is to have what we're referring to as a one-stop shop up front, where 90% of any questions that you have, any forms that you have, any permits that you need can be completed at the front counter. So we'll be changing the physical layout of that. We're hoping to promote Susan Clifton, who's been acting as an interim in this role, to oversee the customer service area up front. And the idea is to be more responsive and better able to answer citizens' questions as they arise.
Yeah. And is there anything like when people call and they get the voicemail, are you going to set targets for calling people back and things like that?
So we'll go through customer service standards. We started having those conversations. One of the things that council that we brought to council was keeping all of our counters open when we're here. Another thing we're going to start doing is answering the phones on Fridays on days when our office hours are not open. We're actually going to go through, before we set the customer service standards, and determine what is the best and most appropriate time to have the counter open, to have City Hall open, and how we want to respond. And this is the first step towards that, and I think we'll go through it as a team effort.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before I open it up for public comment? Okay. If anyone would like to comment on any item on the consent calendar, you can come up to the dais. Oh, not to the dais, to the podium, or both. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring that back for discussion to the council.
I just have one comment on D and the customer service. I think it's a fine idea to improve our customer service and get that organized, so thank you for coming up with that.
And I'll just piggyback on that. I know it's an issue that's been brought up over the years, at least that we've been on council, is how do we improve that? We have heard from so many people in the community about why can't I get this, or how can we access on Fridays when I need it, because those are the days off. So I think the fact that we are adjusting it and layout has even come up in terms of what that looks like coming in is really appreciate the fact that it's being looked at, and given where we are with our finances and our budget, being able to manage that is really impressive. So I look forward to that being successful.
And perhaps when you get the customer service standards, you can bring it back?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, next is the public hearings. We have the consideration of Resolution 17-59, and it looks like we have...
This will actually be Director Gonzalez.
Director Gonzalez,
and
thank you.
We also have Lauren Hines.
We do have a PowerPoint presentation for you this evening. And this is going to be a two-part presentation, as just mentioned by City Manager England, and I will be joined by Lauren Hines shortly. and she's with the Library and Community Services Department. So as you are aware, you just approved a second reading of the vacant property registration ordinance. And the staff report indicated that under separate resolution, the council will establish a fee for the registration program. And tonight, you will be reaching that determination if an annual registration fee should be required to register vacant properties. Staff did do a fee comparison survey, and there are a total of 14 cities in the San Gabriel Valley with a vacant property registration ordinance. And the fees range from the city of Arcadia with no registration fee to a fee as high as $575 in South El Monte. The average of all of these fees is approximately $251. Staff prepared a cost recovery analysis, and based on the estimated hours of work that would be performed by city staff to register such property and do research, some of that research would include initial contact through our code enforcement inspection process, and that individual would do background research and property owner notification, data entry, and also the administrative services staff would actually do the intake of the registration fee. And staff has broken down the cost recovery analysis in the table that's referenced below, and that would account for both the billing rate and the processing time to come up with an estimated fee, and that fee is $247. That actually concludes my portion of the presentation. If you have any questions, we can address them at this point, specific to vacant property registration.
Any questions about?
I have a question. How did you come up with the 124-hour billing rate for the cashier?
That is their current billing rate for work that they're performing.
And it's not their pay, right?
No, it's not their pay.
Can you
Same
elaborate?
thing with the code enforcement.
So you can elaborate what that comes up to for the billing fee?
Excuse me?
Can you elaborate what all is considered part of the billing fee?
Well, for the, I'm going to defer the response to Assistant City Manager Medina.
It's an average of the fully burdened rate for that operation plus supervisory. So it's an average total compensation for that division.
So you're taking into account the room, the surroundings,
Correct.
the equipment, supervisor, all of that.
Not only salary and total compensation, but also supervisory supplies, equipment, so forth.
I just wanted to get that out in the public because it does look like the cashier's making $124
No.
an hour. So that's not.
No.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? These are supposed to be based on cost. Are the costs this much different from us 247, South El Monte's 575? Do we have any idea why there's such variability in these fees?
I think some of the cities actually have a little bit more difficulty in terms of vacant properties due to default. And I think their code enforcement activity is much higher.
So they're building that into.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions?
So I will bring Lauren Hines to the podium.
Welcome to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. As Director Gonzalez has stated, my name is Lauren Hines, and I'm a Recreation Coordinator here to discuss with you some of our filming fees. So we would like the City Council to determine if a reduction in fees, as well as streamlining the signature approval process, is beneficial in increasing film productions within Sierra Madre. So we do have a slideshow presentation for you as well. So what I have here are the current fees that we charge within the city of Sierra Madre as they're broken down to student production, still photography, extra small shoots, which would be 1 to 5 cast crew total, small, 5 to 50 cast crew total, large, 50 plus cast crew total. What we'd also like to do is consolidate them, so we no longer have all of those different categories, make it a little easier, and just have two. So it would be the still photography and the extra small would be one, and the small and large would be one as well. So we'd have two categories, excluding the student film section. Film monitor, if you see that, we'd also like to drop that down from $89 per hour to $83 per hour. Now the film monitor's fee comes from the daily fee. That's already incorporated into the daily fee plan, so the additional time comes when the film monitor is on location for more than 40 hours per set. The signature fees, which we'd like to go ahead and do away with, at $55 an hour currently, we are proposing to just do away with that portion of it, as we no longer go out and do the surveys, the signatures to obtain permission or approval from the residents or merchants affected by filming. That has now been put to the production company themselves, so they're actually able to go out and answer questions directly from our merchants and residents, and we don't have to play middleman. So that's why we're requesting for that to be removed. City facilities, we'd like to drop down to $550 per day. The FSO and police department, we would like to keep at the same rate, so we're not asking for any type of reduction in fees for that section. Business licenses and deposits will remain the same as well. Now, what you notice down below are the hour violations. Those will only pertain to production companies that stay after their allotted time. So if they're permitted to be here till 11 p.m. and they stay past that time, that's when those fees will then kick in. Sorry. The next slide, I have a film fee comparison for you so that you can see where we are in comparison, or what the proposed fees are in comparison to our neighboring cities. Arcadia, Pasadena, and South Pasadena. So, for example, the still photography at $292.10 for the first day and $84 for each additional day would be Arcadia. So we're proposing, and I'm sorry, Pasadena, $61.50 per day. South Pas at $144.50. We'd like to go ahead and drop ours from the $378, I believe it is, down to $300 a day. And that will also be the same price for the extra small from 1 to 5 cast crew. Small production, we'd like to drop it, well, that one and large production will be the same, so anywhere from 6 plus cast crew. $1,000 for the first day and $750 each additional day. As you can see, Arcadia's at $292.10 for the first day, $84 each additional. Pasadena at $734.95 for private property, and $936.13 for public property. So they do charge a little bit more if you're on public area. South Pasadena at $729 per day. Now the city of Sierra Madre, like I said earlier, with the film monitor fees at $1,000 for the first day and $750 each additional, that also covers the cost for the staff member to be on location as well as to process the permit during the whole time. So we're not charging the production company an additional fee for the film monitor to be on location. It's already included in that daily fee. And the FSO, so if you can see, FSO, which is our fire safety officer, per officer, Arcadia is at $152 per hour, Pasadena at $70 per hour, South Pasadena $62 per hour. I'm sorry, 152, 60 and 50 per hour, yes. And we're at 109, so we'd like to keep it at 109. We're not too far off as it is anyhow, and that's where it needs to stay. Police officers, so an officer is at $110 per hour, a sergeant is $145 per hour, flight coordinator at $66, and a community services officer at $52 an hour for the city of Arcadia. For Pasadena, an officer is at $78.42 and a supervisor at $106.65 per hour. South Pasadena at $60 an hour. Again, we will be staying at $109 per hour. The city facilities portion of it. So as you can see, City of Arcadia actually has a park donation made in lieu of charging a city facility fee. Pasadena, quite a difference there, $75.23 per hour, or $10,209.04 per day. South Pasadena is $150 per hour, and we'd like to go ahead and have ours proposed at $550 per hour.
Per day?
Per day.
Per day.
Per day, I'm sorry. I said per hour, I didn't mean that, sorry.
$10,000.
Okay. Now the next portion of this is our signature survey comparison. The signature survey is what we do, or production companies do, in order for us to go ahead with the approval process of the permit. So they will go out to merchants and/or residents within 250 feet of each location, provide them information for that particular film shoot. That will include parking, timeframes, if there's any type of intermittent traffic control, which is called ITC. They also are then informed about police officers, fire safety officers, myself. They're then informed about the aspects of what is going to happen for that film set. And that then, we require a signature approval, 51% to say yes, and then we pass it and we move forward with the permit process. So currently, we are at between the hours of 7 a.m. and 11 p.m., we require 51% approval to go forth with the application and permit. Between the hours of 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., we require 100%. We're asking to go ahead and just streamline it and make it from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m., so within a 24-hour period, the 51%. As you can see, the city of Arcadia has 75% of merchants and/or residents within 300 feet of the film location, and that is also the same for their commercial area. City of Pasadena is different, and the difference is also the fact that there's a lot more filming that goes on in the city of Pasadena, so they do have to break it down within not just the timeframes, but also the days. So we've got within 300 feet of the location, Sunday through Thursday past 7 p.m., 51% is required. Before 7 a.m. or past 10 p.m., 90%. Friday and Saturday nights past 7 p.m., 51%. And before 7 a.m. or past 10 p.m., 75%. So in the commercial area, required notification to all merchants and/or residents within 250 feet in each linear direction of the property lines of the filming location on both sides of the street. Signatures are required for merchants directly impacted by filming, parking, posting of no parking signs in front of their property. South Pasadena, as you can see, between the extended filming hours of 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. is 51%, so they don't require it, from what I understand, and Mr. Vega probably can tell me if I'm correct in that. That's the last I've heard from Joan, was that between 7 and 10 p.m. it's 51%, extended between 10 p.m. and midnight 75%, and between midnight and 7 a.m., 100%. So between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., there really isn't a process. They do a notice of intent to film. So that goes ahead and that allows the merchants and/or residents, it gives them the same information that we also require to be passed out without asking for their approval to pass said permits, unless they fall into that time frame. And for the commercial area, required signatures from property owners or tenants who fall within the impacted area, defined as the first to the last truck, camera placement, personnel or equipment set up on the sidewalk of the street where the activity is occurring. So it wouldn't be on the alternate side, it would be where activity is occurring. And staff recommends the City Council open a public hearing to consider Resolution 1759, approving the fiscal year 2017-2018 filming and vacant property registration fee schedule. Are there any questions on anything that I have given to you?
It looks like we do have some questions before we open it up for public hearing.
Yes, just with regard to dropping to only a 51% signature, what's the thinking on that? I mean, is that going to encourage the filmers to go beyond their normal and just work round the clock?
No. That's not in hopes of encouraging anybody to come in to stay. If I'm understanding your question, I believe the question is, are we encouraging production companies to come in and stay within a 24-hour period?
Yeah.
That is not what we're actually trying to do, and it won't. What we're trying to do is just encourage companies to understand that Sierra Madre is a film-friendly community and to have them come back in. Most of them have not, that I have spoken with, have not asked or made any inquiry to be here with those extended hours. We have had some in the past where they come in and they ask to be here till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, but they don't get here, so it depends on each individual shoot. But overall, no, I have not had any inquiries from any film companies wanting to be here for more than 24 hours. And they as well have to work within their time frames of 12 hours on, because they have their staff that they've got to pay for.
Yeah.
So they've got overtime payments, everything that they have to take into consideration. So they're not going to be able to afford if they do the 24-hour cycle.
Okay, it just seems a little more lenient. Everybody else requires a much higher threshold when you go into the wee hours of the morning.
Councilmember Capocha, that's correct. Other cities do have a higher threshold. If council is concerned about later filming and wanting to ensure a higher approval rate of the neighborhood, that's perfectly appropriate for council to decide. That's one of the reasons we put up the comparisons to show that the 51% was intended to show that we're trying to be friendlier to filming and attract it here, but we don't want to do that at the expense of quality of life.
Yeah, and again, that's just my concern, so it's just a question of how valid your thinking is on that. If,
I understand.
well, how does it work like in the other cities? I mean, do they go in and get the 51% and then they're obligated to have the cut off at that time and they cannot go beyond that?
And that's what it is here as well. So when they fill out the application and they tell me that they want to be here on a certain day between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., that's their cutoff. If they're here any later than 7 p.m., that's when those hour violation fees will kick in at $1,000 per hour, per truck, per personal vehicle. So we are not encouraging them to be here for the entire 24 hours. They will have to tell us what time frame.
Yeah.
And in doing so, they'll still have to get permission and approval from the merchants and residents. So they won't just have a blanket come in.
So what is the process for collecting signatures? They go door to door and knock on the doors? So
Yes, they do.
Then they need, the 100% threshold is very hard to achieve,
Correct.
I'm sure, huh?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Any other questions before we open up to public hearing?
My one question is, it just seems that we're still high for the filming. That we're still doing $1,000. I know we're dropping it from our $1,700 to $1,000. Why are we so much higher than the other cities?
I don't know if you want to take this.
So I'll answer that. When we look at the resources, the other city in Arcadia and Pasadena, they have more staff and more ability to monitor some of these films. If we have a film on site and Lauren goes out to monitor it, that's one half of our community services department that's now on site all day, which means that everyone else in the department is trying to backfill on the work that's done. We're trying to be friendlier with the process. We're trying to take the fees down to what we think is reasonable, recognizing that in some areas we are going to be larger, but it takes a larger toll on us as well. If we have, for example, if we can't get a fire services officer scheduled, we're often sending our entire fire truck up to the chute, or at least to do periodic spot checks. You would never see that in Arcadia or Pasadena.
Okay.
How sensitive is it to price? I mean, do the film companies look at that like we're going to cost them $5,000 more over a few days than somebody else, and does that affect their decision making?
I've heard a wide range of answers on that. We may want to let Mr. Fager respond to that.
Please do. Well, come to the podium, please. Yeah.
This is Mr. Russ Vega. He owns Home Shoot Home, and I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, my company is Home Shoot Home, and I represent homeowners in the San Gabriel Valley who want to host filming at their homes or businesses. And I met with Lauren and Gabe this summer about all this because I know that there's been talk of wanting to get more filming in Sierra Madre because it does bring in revenue. No one wants to turn Sierra Madre into a back lot with, constant productions, but it would be nice to make it a little easier because homeowners a lot of times will benefit financially. Their neighbors benefit by getting money for renting their driveway or having lunch at their house, and that brings more money into the city. So I know that there are some thoughts about, well, if we take our costs down, we're not bringing in as much money. On the other side, if you take your costs down, more people are going to come to film here. And yes, companies take a very serious look at these numbers. Pasadena can be pretty expensive, and companies will oftentimes decide not to shoot there because of the costs involved. And I deal with, hundreds of scouts, so I hear a lot about, which cities are easy, don't send me here, don't send me there. People just have an idea that Sierra Madre is difficult because it's, it's expensive and it's a small community that you don't have a lot of staff available. So the thought was if we can bring these fees down to a point where location people feel like it's reasonable, they're going to bring more business to your city. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I was a location manager for 25 years and have had my company for 15 years and have about 1,100 homeowners that I represent.
So do you feel that the fees are, and the process is reasonable now?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm glad to see that there's been this proposal to take the fees down because, as you can see, those permit fees per day are extremely high compared to others. And in fact, Los Angeles, for instance, doesn't charge for any additional days on a permit. You can have 10 locations on a permit. So it's not going to be like the next day is $100, then it's just the blanket fee. You guys are already asking for more on the second and third day, but you're taking it down, which is really important because that was really prohibitive.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
So it's your view that this will help, what you see here?
I absolutely believe it will help. I know that we talked about how many film shoots you had in 1 year. It wasn't much, and I think you could do a lot better for your city and your people. I get calls all the time. I got one today from somebody who wants to list their home here in Sierra Madre. I said, you know, I'm happy to do it, but here are the obstacles. And I'd rather not have to say, here are the obstacles. And as far as the 51% threshold, I understand your concern about people wanting to take advantage of that. But like Lauren said, production companies aren't interested in spending any more time or money in a place that they don't have to. They're on a pretty tight schedule and budget as well, so I don't think it would behoove them to go late and pay these $1,000 per vehicle fees. It's just not something that they'd want to take on.
Yeah.
And if they do want to go late for a shoot till 2 or 3, it is incumbent upon them to talk to the neighbors and make sure everybody's on board with it that are actually affected, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's totally reasonable to ask of the production company.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up question. So, one, on the public safety, is it just standard that we devote on-duty public safety officers, whether it's fire or police, to a film shoot? I mean, to me, that just seems counterintuitive. It seems like you wouldn't want your police officers, your firefighters, you know, sitting watching Adam Sandler get, you know, filmed, which is what happened a few years ago. You know, why are we using on-duty fire safety and police officers?
Well, let me answer the question per department,
Yeah.
and I do have both chiefs available to go ahead and assist us if I need them. But for the police department, for example, we would normally have officers on site with us when we're doing what's called intermittent traffic control. And what that does is they are actually able to then hold traffic safely in 3-minute intervals so that the company can go ahead and get whatever shots that they need to get. Once that 3 minute has passed, then they open up the streets and traffic is able to flow again. Without that, we do run into safety issues. Having film crews in the middle of the street without officers holding traffic, that's just not going to work. And that also helps us with pedestrian control because they can do the same thing but on the sidewalks, and they can hold pedestrians safely so that the film companies can go ahead and get their shots. They're also vital to us in the morning when we move into a location. If we've got trucks moving in or pulling out, moving all over Dodge, and I mean, these people can drive them basically through a pinhole. But we still need officers to be on standby to conduct traffic control to make sure that other drivers don't somehow get involved just to thwart any accidents that may happen. For fire, well, whenever we have a generator, that's when we require a fire safety officer. Generators, anything could happen, and we're dealing with electricity. So we do need a fire safety officer to be on site to go ahead and handle any situation that could possibly happen. Not just that, but their job is also to be there to assist us with any type of stunts, special effects, what have you. They'll deal with the prop master and make sure that the prop master has all of their licensing correct, that everything is done properly. So they're a vital person on location. If it's a still shoot that we do not have a generator, then we don't require personnel. We do not require personnel in every single shoot.
Yeah.
Everything is case by case.
We have Chief Ortiz explain the on-duty versus off-duty scheduling.
Yeah, and as he's coming, I mean, the concern is obviously if you have, we don't have many police officers in this community, and if you had one of our 2 patrols devoted to a film shoot and there's an emergency, something's being compromised. Either it's the film shoot safety or it's the community safety. So
So the film shoot's covered by off-duty police officers.
So it's off-duty.
It's an overtime detail that's offered for off-duty police officers.
Got it.
The fire marshal, again, it's an emergency situation where they would have to sit, the fire engine would have to sit somewhere as a film shoot. So it's 99.9% of the time it's off-duty detail for our officers or our firefighters.
Got it. Okay.
And the $109 an hour is the cost for overtime at bringing.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. And then my second question was, I guess I'm still confused. So if a film crew wanted to film from midnight to 7 a.m., they'd have to get the 51% signatures, but now I'm hearing that they'd be paying penalty fees to do that. Is that correct?
No. The penalty, so when they come in and they give me the application, they'll go ahead and they'll state on the application they'd like to be here on January 10th between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m.
Got it.
Then they go out and speak with the homeowners and or merchants and let them know that's the time frame. Their permit is granted based on the 51% approval.
Okay.
With that, they're only allotted the time frame that they've put on the application. If they've gone past the time frame they put on the application, that's when the overtime fees will apply.
Okay. That makes sense.
The question is, if they wanted to schedule from 12 a.m. to 7 a.m., they'd still only have to do 51%. Other communities have looked at that and said that's too low of a threshold because of the impact potentially on sleeping, and just having peace and quiet. So, and that it is appropriate for council to say 51% is too low for nighttime or early morning filming.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Okay, now we can open this up officially for the public hearing, and if you would like to comment on this item, please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. And I'm watching time to make sure that we can allow for everyone that needs to speak on this item has the opportunity to do so.
Barbara Lee, and I think this is 2 items, so I'm going to break up and speak on the vacant property registration first. Do the monies that were spoken here tonight, would that be covering also like the weed abatement and alarm response, if it's a constant checking in on the home alarms? Is that included with the overall fee that you have set here? Okay, jumping over to the filming, yay, I'm so glad that you guys are starting to reduce some of the costs that were built up over the years. In fact, eventually I hope that you'll be going through and updating and going through all of the different fees that were nitpicked and probably should be zeroed out or redone. But anyway, for filming, I think you're going to have 100% signatures from people here in town. It's been a while since we've had some good film productions. Most of them are very respectful. And I think this is a great answer to putting some money back into our funds so that we have our water pipes and our library. You know, so yay for filming. Over the years, so many films have been done here. And I'm driving all throughout Los Angeles, filming constantly on all the different cities I'm in. And Sierra Madre's kind of been a stepchild. So I'm glad that you guys are opening back up, maybe even reduce some of these fees even more so. But I know the town loves to get involved, loves to see what's going on. So I think it's going to be back to where it was before with just really, this might be a very good and positive thing that you've come back into town and said, let me go ahead and see what we can do to get us back on the map. I think the original It's a Wonderful Life town. Thanks.
Thank you. And do we have an answer to that first question, whether, Mr. City Manager, for if the weed abatement and
The
fees?
fee for our code enforcement would be determining if the property is vacant, tracking down the primary owner or person in charge, contacting them. If there needs to be an abatement process, we have a process for that already, and it would go through that process.
Okay, it's a separate process. Great, thank you. Would anybody else like to comment on this public hearing item? Seeing none, we'll bring that back for discussion with City Council.
Is everybody okay with that 51% for off?
I actually am not. I didn't know if I was going to be the only one. I actually, and I appreciate hearing it may not encourage folks to stay later, but I don't think, I think we should actually deter filming between 12 and 7. I don't think it should be 100%. I kind of like some of these other thresholds. I'm concerned about 100% where someone will just be the holdout and get money out of the production company, and I don't know if 100% needs to be the number. But I do like the idea of separating out midnight to 7 a.m. It looks like I'm just throwing that out there, but even raising that threshold to 75%, 80%, I just also don't want to encourage during that time. I find that time very precious for myself.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that, actually. I, admittedly don't have much of a frame of reference for any of this, so it's helpful to hear from folks in the industry. And look, if we think that this is going to encourage filming, I think that's good. I guess putting aside the revenue for the city, I mean, I don't really have a sense of how much revenue we have on a yearly basis or how much revenue we'll really be able to obtain with these changes. I think it's growing up, and even now, I mean, it's just kind of a cool thing to see. I mean, people really like to see film crews, and kids just really love it. So I think that there's actually some community benefit to having it regardless of the revenue. The revenue's nice, but again, I don't think we really have a frame of reference here as to how much we'll really be bringing in terms of, more than we are now, maybe less, I don't know. But I do think that it would be nice to encourage more filming. So with all that being said, without a real frame of reference, I think it looks fine. I do think that if someone wants to come in here and film between midnight and 7 a.m., it should be higher, maybe 75%. I'd probably be willing to go up to 90, but
that's hard. It might be hard to get to 90, though.
Yeah, it might. I mean, but I guess the mayor makes a good point. I mean, that's the magic. I mean, maybe they don't get to 90, and you're not going to be filming between midnight and 7 a.m. Yeah. I guess if my neighbor was if they were filming a movie at my neighbor's house at 3 a.m. and I didn't approve it, I'd be pretty pissed. So
Agreed.
Yeah. I'll add to that just somewhat. I'm just thinking about our property owners, because I personally know someone who's interested in doing this and has been talking about it a long time. I think this might, if this provides more opportunities for that person and others in the town, that's a good reason to do it. Otherwise, if we can get some public revenue too, that's gravy. Yeah. Plus, there's the entertainment value, because every time I've seen one of these in town, people around what's going on, it becomes kind of an event, right? So I do agree. I do have the same concerns with the late nights. I think you're right. 75% threshold at a minimum, I think, because people are not going to want to deal with people filming with the bright lights and all the noise that late at night. So I think I'm in concurrence with everybody.
So the 75%, though, is that of occupied properties? I mean, we're just, the first part of this is discussing unoccupied properties. So.
Actually, I think it might be helpful for Lauren to walk through if a homeowner's unable to be contacted, what happens. If on the percentage threshold, if a homeowner is unable to be contacted, are they marked as yes or no, or not contacted?
There are several attempts made, so it's not just one time. The company will go out 3 or 4 different times, and when they submit the packet to me, I do see the number of attempts made. I do require, when I look at the signatures, I definitely look at and make sure that we have 51% yes. Those that do not respond, I guess in theory we could, Captain Goth or Acting Chief Goth and I had talked about this in the past.
All right.
Well, there's an answer for us. That it would be an assumed or implied yes. However, I do make sure that when I look at the signatures that I have a yes from 51%. So I don't just necessarily take, if we're going for the 100%, if somebody's out of town, there are different scenarios that would impact that.
It sounds like currently a vacant property would be assumed or implied yes. However, council probably makes more sense to have that being assumed or implied no.
Well, that's my thinking. And that's why I wouldn't want the threshold to be
So
excessively high, because you don't want to get into that too much. It's just like get like you said, 51%. You have the signatures. I don't care about the ones you couldn't contact or didn't contact. As long as you had 51. So I'm thinking maybe 75 is a good number, and you don't worry about that stuff.
I would like 75%. I wouldn't go higher than that. but 75. Obviously, something between 12 and 7 a.m. We do want to have the majority of the neighbors in
Yeah,
agreement.
super majority.
And I do want to appreciate the fact of simplifying the fee schedule, and I looked at all these different categories and how many different amounts, so that's a really good thing, and I'm definitely in favor for that. But it sounds like we may have some agreement here, so if there are any other comments and/or if we want to make a motion based on the discussion, I'll entertain that now.
Are we doing both the vacant properties and the
resolution?
What?
Looks like it's one resolution.
Council amend and adjust the fee schedule is the actual vote, what it'll be on for both filming.
Oh, so the survey piece is not on there?
The staff will take direction on that, and if
Oh.
we have to change our policy, then we'll implement it based on direction. If we have to update an ordinance, we'll bring it back for an official reading at 75%.
Okay.
Understood, okay.
Okay.
So moved.
With the recommendation on, yeah, and just to be clear on the recommendation is 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 75%?
Right.
Okay.
Is it 12 or 11?
11.
11.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
At
fine.
75%?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay,
is it second?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for the presentation. Let's see those movies come in.
Yeah.
Okay, now we move into discussion, and the first item on the discussion agenda is community survey on Sierra Madre Public Library. And who do we have reporting on that? Mr. City Manager, take it away.
And Clarissa Lowe will be helping me as well. We, after our last meeting with council, we met with the library board to finalize the areas that they wanted to get feedback on. We took those questions to NRC, had NRC assist us in crafting them to make sure they were appropriate, non-leading, unbiased questions. So that's what the first question number one is. It seemed that the response has been mostly positive. We have made a few small changes to what's in your packet based on a conversation we had with the chair of the Community Services Commission this morning. So question one, we're going to include a clause about also maintaining or expanding community services if a move is completed. The most feedback we got, why I say it's mostly positive, the negative feedback we got was people felt some of the demographic information was invasive. When we asked the survey company about it, they said that the demographic information is to ensure we don't have non-response bias. Essentially, they want to make sure that the people responding are demographically representative of the adults who live in Sierra Madre. We can comfortably remove some of the demographic information and still have a statistically significant response rate. If we remove all of the demographic information, then this kind of becomes a straw poll as opposed to a survey. At this point, I think, based on further conversations with the Library Services Board, they're comfortable with the demographic information, less the race and ethnicity question. And we talked with NRC about that, and due to the racial composition of the city, they believe it would not be an issue to remove that. They did not recommend removing further demographic information. And based on feedback on the release date, the staff report says either the first week of December or the first week of January. We're recommending first week of January to ensure we don't have a suppressed response due to the holidays.
Can I ask a question about the demographic? Sorry, I don't know.
No, please, I can open it for questions.
To play devil's advocate, I guess, what is the concern about the ethnicity or the race demographic questions, considering this is a survey that's going to be filled out and answered anonymously, right? I mean, it's not like anyone will know what people are checking. So I guess what has been, I can see the opposite side. I can see why something objectively, this is objectively offensive, I guess, because you're asking me what my race or ethnicity is. But what has been the argument against it, I guess?
That has been the argument against it, just that
Just-
it feels too personal, too
Okay.
invasive. The information, any information that's answered is confidential, so it's not gonna, we're not gonna be able to take the survey and trace it back to who answered it. That's part of the confidential information. We will never see that. But the argument was, hey, this is none of your business,
Mhm.
so please don't.
Yeah, I
answer.
can see that. But is there, you said that they think, NRC, they think that it won't be an issue if we take it off. I mean,
No,
is,
NRC recommends including it as demographic information to ensure that the response is representative. However, because of the demographic composition of the city, they believe they can get a representative survey as long as we include the other demographic indicators, age, gender, and homeowner versus renter.
I guess when would they know, they believe, how confident are they? Because obviously if we send this out without it, and then they realize after the fact that, hey, we thought, but
So
it was
they-
close, but no cigar.
They can guarantee now that it'll be, based on response rate, it'll be statistically significant. So we're sending it to every residential household in 91024. If we get a correct response rate, we can say it's statistically significant to a certain percentage. That statistical significance is 100% reliant on response rate. If we don't allow them to weigh the demographic information appropriately, then they could come out with a statement that says this represents to a 95% valid level the opinions of homeowners in Sierra Madre, but they could not say it represents the adult population of Sierra Madre because we couldn't weight the race and ethnicity question appropriately. So that there's not including that is going to ensure that it's not 100% representative, but we can't tell you how representative that will be until we get the responses back and we know what demographic information is included. So we could say adult male voters, for example, if we keep gender in, we can weight that. We know the percentage of male to female population. This represents your average adult male voter, but we couldn't say it's representative of the community as a whole. With that said, a statistically significant survey that includes or incorporates the other demographic information gives a lot of information to council how to ultimately make their decision. So if statistically significant response rate at 3.9% is seen as valid to council, then it may not necessarily matter if it's also demographically representative.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions that we have for?
Yeah, the only other question I have about the demographics is why are we calling out Spanish, Hispanic, or Latino?
So race and ethnicity are different.
Right.
So we have a population of that ethnicity that we don't want to get kind of sucked into another race category. So it's distinct, it's not a race, but it is a distinct ethnicity. So we would want to ensure that people of that ethnicity are represented. What we know from surveys in general, doesn't mean it would happen here, is that the response will be answered by more females than males. It'll be answered by more affluent than non-affluent. It will be answered less by all minority categories, and it will be answered less by renters. So we want to control for that, knowing it will likely happen. With that said, it may not be information that's useful in making your ultimate decision.
Question, so why don't we ask about household income? If you know that higher incomes tend to respond more.
So we could ask about household income as an indicator. However, when you look at the strata of income we have, we're pretty homogeneous in a lot of ways. And when you look at income categories, that's one of the ways that we're pretty homogeneous. I think we saw that when we worked on the Highland Muse and how difficult it was to get certain income brackets qualified. So it's one of the areas that would not make as much of a difference if we weighted it. So again, there's not a magic demographic mix, but when you look at our community, these are the ones that make the most sense to weight.
Yeah.
And so if we pulled out the ethnicity, it would be number 9 and 10. Those questions would be pulled.
Yes, but we would not pull out only ethnicity. It would be race and ethnicity.
So it would be 9 and 10. Okay, thank you.
And can you repeat again how I think you were saying there was a recommendation to include community services in one of the questions, and how was that?
Yeah, one of the concerns we heard from the chair is that this, even though it's operationally about the library and how the library operates, if a move were to happen, there's also a benefit to the community services and being able to expand or change or offer different services by going to the new location. And they wanted to make sure that's captured, and it's absolutely appropriate. It's not library operational, but it is something that would happen if a move was approved.
So is that a separate question, or you're saying that you would modify one of the questions?
It would be included in the move question.
Okay.
Just one more question about question A. Do we feel that everybody is pretty solid on understanding where the Sierra Madre Recreation Center is?
Mm.
We spent a lot of time on this question, actually.
You did?
And the answer is probably. No, we feel that this is a good enough description.
Shouldn't we
that
put
they know
maybe
where
in
it is.
parentheses Sierra Vista Park?
We talked about that. We talked about putting the address. We talked about incorporating a lot of different ways. And in the end, we have to be able to fit it here. So we determined that calling the building by its name was probably the most appropriate thing to do.
Okay, then how about question number 3? That's the problem I have. In an average month, how often do you use library? Well, I use it somewhere between not at all and 1 and 2 times a month. So what do I put?
So we asked them about that, and they gave a pretty funny response that unless you use it 0.5 times, then you're using it either not at all or once. So they said that seldom, if you said seldom or not at all, then, well, is seldom once or is seldom not at all? They said just make them firm buckets. Either you don't use it or use it one to 2 times.
Okay.
But going back to Councilmember Poach's question, hypothetically, if we eliminate questions 9 and 10, we could potentially put the address of the recreation center in to make space.
Potentially.
Okay. No, I think it's a valid question. I think probably is the correct answer, but I think it would make more sense to
Or even to
identify
say
it as.
yak or something.
So this was one of the more interesting conversations. It was initially yak, and then it was pointed out to us that the yak is actually on the 2nd floor.
Right.
And it's not, and I didn't know that. So yes, if we remove 9 and 10, then we probably have enough room for an address or a park.
An asterisk.
Maybe a park, maybe the.
So Sierra Vista Park.
In parentheses, I think. Oh, but you've also already got something in parentheses right behind.
Double
Well, you figure it out.
Which would require expanding the recreation center building in Sierra Vista.
At Sierra Vista Park, yeah.
So let's make sure we have any other questions for Mr. City Manager before we go into other discussion items, and we can open it up for public comment. But do we have any other questions? No?
Well, my only other question is gender, because we don't have any other.
We could that has not come up before. That there's not an other gender.
We're not
does not
for
apply.
transgender. We're not being able to capture.
So
Well, but, I mean, even if you're transgender, you're identifying as a gender, so.
well, we would.
No.
No, there are
Not
some
to wade.
Okay.
Not to wade into the culture.
Yeah,
wars.
I was
The-
gonna say-
The reason it's just yes or no is that's the demographic information we have on the census. So including
Okay.
another option ensures that your response, it wouldn't be weighted.
Representative.
Yeah.
Maybe the next census will dig a little deeper.
Yes.
Okay. Seeing that there are no other questions from the dais, I can open this up for public comment. If there's anyone that would like to comment on this item, please come forward, and if you can please state your name and address, and we have the clock right above for a 3-minute time. Hello, stranger.
Leslie Hinton, 516 Acacia. I have only read things in the newspaper and on the blog. I haven't heard anything from the governing body. My understanding is that there will be 1 survey per family. Is that correct?
So
Yes, it will go to every address, residential
Okay.
address in 91024.
Now, if my husband has one view and I have another, that to me is an issue. And the other question is, I have heard that you might be able to fill the survey out online. Is that true?
I'll let Clarissa answer that question.
If you have received a
Actually, if you can come up to the podium, please.
And
Okay,
Clarissa,
if-
you are?
My name is Clarissa Lowe. I'm a recreation coordinator here.
Thank
If anyone receives the survey, that is how they'll be able to fill it out online. As the city manager explained, we will be sending out one to every household at 91024. We opted not to send them to the P.O. boxes at 91025. Most were businesses and or people who just we're also receiving mail at 91024. If a person does not receive a survey in the mail, though, you will not have an access code that will allow you to fill it out online. So we will not have just an open online link for everyone to fill out. It is specifically anyone who receives the survey.
Okay, thank you.
I know you had one other question. Do you have any other comments, Ms.
That was
Hinton?
it, just
Okay.
questions.
Thank you.
On the, if there's more than one adult in the household, the survey directs, I believe it's the person who had the latest birthday, to fill it out. One of the things we talk when we choose to do a survey versus a census, is one of the reasons the demographic information is important, is that we can then determine, again, statistically significantly, if the opinions are valid and representative of everyone, every adult voter in the city. Because this is going to every household. That's not to be confused with going to every person. It's going to every household.
And you said it was the most recent birthday?
I believe that's what is directed to do.
Oh, here. Yeah, it's on.
Likely, people will not follow that direction.
Exactly. They're going to do what they want.
So, which is why again, the demographic information becomes important.
The first one that grabs the mail can fill it out, or they can fight over it, or collaborate, or throw it away, you know?
Would anyone else? Would anyone else like to comment on this item?
Good evening. Debbie Sheridan, and I live at Valley Vista Drive. My employer is the Survey Research Center of the University of Michigan, and so this is what I do for a living. And I would like to thank you for some of the changes that you made, one of not sending out the survey in December, because I think that would have been horrible. I might point out, though, that the census data is nearly 8 years old. So I'm wondering, this may be totally irrelevant, but if you wanted to add a question of, were you living here 8 years ago? Just because you're looking for something that's statistically valid. And I just wanted to say thank you also for sending this out to every household, because I thought originally you had discussed sending it out to 1,500 households, and in my opinion, that would have been a disaster. We're so small. And I would also like to applaud you for not putting race or ethnicity down. But because we are fairly homogeneous in this town, unlike a lot of towns in the area. But I just wanted to make one other comment listening to you tonight. I ask in the surveys that I do, I ask some extremely sensitive questions, and the one question people refuse to answer is, what did you earn last year? So if you leave out income, that's probably going to be beneficial, and I think you can get your data another way. So anyway, thank you very much.
Before you leave, so not having the household income would not have any effect, do you think?
In my opinion, I don't think that that's really necessary, because people will take more offense at that than they will by what is your race or your ethnicity. So what do you weigh is another one, but you're not asking that one.
Deb, can I ask you a question then? So what's your view, based on what you do for a living, why would you, I guess, exclude the race and the ethnicity if NRC is saying to include it? I mean,
Just because I feel, even though it does need to be, well, I guess that's another question I have too, is do we need this to be statistically valid because you're not going to follow what the people say? That's just going to give you a guideline. But with race and ethnicity, it's more irrelevant in Sierra Madre, and especially when you try to separate race and you try to separate ethnicity, most people don't understand that question. And what is your race? So many people these days, especially in California, take offense to that one too. Well, what do you mean? I am, 1/64th Native American, and I am, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was black or African American, and how do I answer that? Or if you happen to be Filipino, as my daughter-in-law is, then, oh man, we have discussions about that too. So, anyway,
if I'm hearing you correctly, because we're not a largely diverse community.
Because we're not largely
It's not gonna
diverse,
be
we're
significant.
small enough, we're going to 5,000 households, that's all we have here in Sierra Madre. And yes, it's not gonna make that big of a difference. If it did, if we were going somewhere else, Pasadena maybe, it might make a difference, but I don't think it does here.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your expertise.
Any more questions?
But appreciate your
We
insight.
appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
and
Thank you,
being an
Counselor.
expert.
And I will just say that we did push pretty hard for that 5,000, so thank you.
Yes, one last comment, I'm so sorry. You guys, we can also watch you on Sunday morning, which I do, 7 a.m., anybody who's up.
Oh, wow.
We'll be thinking of that on Sunday mornings.
Mayor, just so council's clear, make sure we're not including any financial information in there.
Right.
Right.
Just, it's not in there. We don't intend to include it.
Okay. Glad Mrs. Sheridan reminded me of that. If you guys could replay these council meetings at least once a month, maybe I'm just home at the wrong time to see them, but I'm usually
Apparently
just
now
getting-
at 7 o'clock on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, that I've learned. But if this guy's still awake, maybe. Anyway, I wasn't going to get up, but that one last jab for ethnicity. When the new children's room went into the library, I went and looked around and I said, where are the books dealing with children of different diversities? I think they now have less than 50, maybe 25 books. So there's an answer.
Thank you. And I'll just put a plug for online streaming. You are all more than welcome to check us out online. I get my fix there if I need to. Okay, any other public comments?
Mary Kate Crawford, Grove Street. Regarding the specific questions, one thing in the cover letter is it states that there are two general themes that are going to be addressed: move and expand the library, or repair and move and expand library and services, or repair and limit the services available. To me, that is oversimplification. It does not mention selling a very important city asset, the library property and the lot behind it. I believe that that should be included. Of the 4 questions on the survey, 2 of them have a portion that is underlined. The last 2 options do not. To me, that implies a certain bias towards 2 of those. It's drawing attention to 2 options out of the 4, and I think that makes it seem less impartial. I have some general concerns which are not specifically in here in the survey, but I think this has been addressed as a library problem, and it isn't. It's a budget problem. The library, as I understand it, is funded out of the general fund. which also includes police, fire, salaries, pension, debts, and bond obligations, as well as deferred maintenance. And that is really what you're dealing with here, is deferred maintenance. We've inherited this, and now we have to figure out what to do with it. But the library is not isolated. I'm also concerned that the approach of, we have a library, it needs fixing, hey, it's on property that we can sell, is perhaps an oversimplification. And I think it is something that should be considered in light of the entire budget. If the library is sold, the money is going into the general fund, and the question should be, what is the best use of that money? It may or may not be the library, and something could come up unexpected that in 1 year or 5 years we'd wish we had had that asset. It isn't specifically, again, on this survey question, but I think that that is a bigger question that is more important than the specific details on the survey. Thank you.
Thank you. So I am looking at Mr. City Manager. If that, it looks like he's jotting some notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
So on the two general themes, the repair and limit, we actually had quite a bit of conversation about what we want to include in the cover letter. And the idea is to give people information that they know it's from the city, that we want their feedback, but not repeating questions on the front and in the survey. So we want to make sure that they understand it's from the city, that we want their feedback, but then to read the questions very carefully, which is why we have currently 10 questions, but it looks like we'll end with 8, but only 2 general options. We're trying to get them to the back of the postcard. The underlining is done intentionally to draw people on the question, to make them understand that, hey, maybe we would like to move the library, maybe we'd like to expand services, maybe we want to include community services. To fund that, we have to make a permanent sacrifice, which is selling a current building. So we are really trying to get them to understand that part of the question. With that said, I will take it back specifically to NRC and see what their thoughts about it are, not underlining it. We only underlined the options about selling, because that's a permanent, irreversible thing. Points 4 and 5 on it's a general fund problem, deferred maintenance, and what are the funds best used for, I think those are just good points. It's true, and we have to balance and prioritize what we spend what our funds are. Council, through the budget process, has identified public safety, public works, parks and rec, and library. So that's how we're balancing things right now. The deferred maintenance is an issue at the building, and if we don't move, we still will have to prioritize funds out of one of the options that we have here to ensure that we have a safe building that's accessible.
And I'd be interested to hear what NRC has to say about the underlying. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I can see how that could be interpreted in one way and or assumed. So
I agree.
Okay. All right.
So a few questions. Oh, Meredith Keith, 28 North Highland. A couple questions that I had about the survey. The option of, worst case scenario of someone coming in to evaluate the building, the current library building, and seeing that it's not ADA compliant and shutting it down. We're not asking any questions about those worst case scenario, because that could happen, because currently it is not safe. And that is a real big possibility, and I have a deep concern about that happening, and then having the building turned into the church on Highland that 17 years later now is just getting built. But before that was rat infested, deferred maintenance, fenced up, and I'd hate to see that happen to the current library property. So I'd like to give the community get some input back from them of what they would like to see, because that is a real possibility that could happen at any moment.
So, sorry, I thought you might have more. That, similar to the previous speaker, it's a point well taken that we need to communicate to the community. If we don't move the library and we don't have a funding source, which would be option D on here, if that's what's selected, when we talk about changes to library services, how we operate the library today would pretty immediately change. So we would likely have to close or seal off parts of the building. We'd have to limit or completely bar access to the basement. It would impact a lot of the operations we have there, but we can't knowingly operate a building that we know violates ADA, and we can't knowingly operate a building that we know is not safe. So we talked a lot about how do we communicate that without scaring people. So, you know, is it catastrophic reduction? Is it, you know, what is it? So we're trying to choose words to communicate. What we went with was significantly reduce or limit services that likely is not painting a picture that's strong enough. I agree with that. But we also don't want people to look at it and feel that, you know, we're fear-mongering. We talked a lot about it with both NRC and the library board, and one of the reasons that we're happy to move it to January is it gives us more time to go out and say, you know, these are the changes that will take place. Why don't you come take a tour of the library, walk through it. We'll show you what the basement looks like. We'll show you what the emergency exits look like. We'll show you what the roof looks like. So it's an absolute problem, and not communicating in extreme terms was intentional, but I do admit the words we chose probably don't make people immediately recognize what we're talking about.
So part of a survey is you want to be as objective. You don't want to be objective, right? Or subjective.
Subjective. What we want to do, so if you look at D.
You don't want to sway anybody to one direction.
Correct. We're trying not to
So you want to keep trying to keep
answer.
neutral words, tones, but at least to get the message across. So when you say, you know, fund the move by selling the current library, that is bringing the attention that the library will be sold, that land will be sold, but you don't want to expand to make it worse or better, right?
Correct. It's hard to use words that are not code words.
Right.
So we're trying very, very hard to let people read it and determine what services they want in their library and where they want those library services to take place at. The community does need to understand if we don't move, we don't have a funding source, the ADA, federal laws are going to drive a lot of what we do there, and we'll work on a transition plan, but we have to have a building that's accessible, and after that, we have to make sure we're safe. So we're not seismic safe right now.
I was going to ask you about that.
Our emergency exits are safe. We don't have a lot of things that are correct. So
it's a hazard during an earthquake, right?
Yeah, the structure itself, but also the items inside of it.
Right.
You still have some time, so please, I know you have another question.
I had one more point. I wanted to thank you for, especially City Manager, for taking the call from Chair and opening all of the community services to have an open conversation with you, because we are a really good resource. We're out there in the community at all of the events. We're talking to everybody, and believe me, everybody is talking to us. And we have a lot of knowledge of what the community thinks about what's going on with the library and community services. And we also want to offer our support as the fact that we believe, and 100% we're one department, it's library and community services. So any type of cut to the library is a cut to our community in a big way, in a huge way, because we're offering youth and seniors to be together, to read the same book, to share stories, and that's something that you can't put a checkbox or a 1 to 5 I vote for on. You know, these are important things that I want you guys to be aware of, and also use this as a resource, because we fell a little bit out of the loop, and we want you to know we're here to help and support however we can and get the correct information out to the community about what's going on. I want to say on record that the library is not planning on taking over the rec center in any way, shape, or form. That would be a one-unit thing.
And I do want to say I appreciate that. I think that it was very well noted when I spoke to you that we need to make sure that as we move forward, that really is the different commissions are participating in this conversation.
Yeah, the seniors as well, because they get their computer classes from the library and things like that. So, you know, I keep everybody in the loop, because it's not just the library services that you lose when you send the survey out. You're losing senior services, you're losing community services, you're losing it all. So I just want to make sure that the community knows that, and somehow if that could be conveyed on the survey, it'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Would anyone else like to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring this back to discussion. Looks like we have a lot to think about. Timeline-wise, Mr. City Manager, can you remind us again what we need to do and by when? If we're trying to get it out by January.
Yeah, after council approves any changes tonight, we'll take that back to NRC. We'll ask them the questions about bias and the underlining, have the other conversation with them from everything tonight. But after tonight, that's it for council. We'll take it to NRC, and they should have enough time between now and the first week of January to get everything up, printed, ready to go.
Okay. Okay, so we'll, would like to comment on this item.
Yeah, I mean, I can go. And, you know, my view on this, and I think it's been since we approved this, is, you know, you don't hire a dog and then do your own barking. You know, and what that means is you don't hire an expert and then come in and second guess that expert. And I think the NRC is the expert here. And I think it's really helpful to hear from Deb Sheridan as well, because she is also an expert. So I say that because my view is that as is fine with me. Now, I don't think that's necessarily going to be where the council is, but on specifically the race and the ethnicity, sure, I don't like answering those questions either. But I assume they're included for a reason. I think in Sierra Madre it's probably less significant because of you know, the ethnic and racial makeup of our community. But again, I assume NRC knew what the data was when they put this together, and I assume they know what they're doing better than me. So I just don't see a compelling reason not to put it on there, other than I guess some people feel uncomfortable answering questions. You know, so to me, it's I haven't heard really anything compelling to leave 9 and 10 off. And, you know, again, if the people we hired to put this together think it's significant, then I would leave it. I think that there's some other good points that, you know, we don't address in the survey about what could happen and to the library and all that. I just don't see how we're necessarily going to be able to address that in the survey. It's probably work we're going to have to do on community outreach. So, long answer, short answer is, I like it the way it is. I would leave 9 and 10. I get the point about where the Sierra Madre Rec Center is, you know, whether people would know that. To me, I don't know. I guess I just never, it wasn't an issue that popped out at me until you guys brought it up. I'm probably not the person, though, that we need to worry about most. So that is a general concern that I can see. To me, I knew exactly what we were talking about, but probably because I knew what we were talking about. But, you know, I think that some people are going to probably be confused. So my only hesitation is, yeah, maybe we add the address there, but if we do, I don't see a lot of space here. So I would leave as is, but I'd like to hear from you guys too.
You know, I'm good with all the questions. Like I said before, it's really hard when you're trying to put a survey together to make it so you're not preaching just one side or trying to get people to come over to whatever you want them to be. And in this situation, we really haven't made any decisions. So we really want to leave it open and to see where the community stands. And I think our questions are fine. I would like, if they can, add something about the impact on community services as well, because I think that's a well noted. I'm okay with moving number 9 and 10 so that we can add some space to indicate where the Sierra Madre Recreation Center is. But all in all, I think this will give us the information that we need to move forward and make a good decision for the community.
I'll go. Yeah, I think one thing we just have to keep in mind, you know, just listening to the comments from the public, is there's no such thing as a perfect survey. This, again, is to give us a sense of what the community feels. I mean, you can come up with a scenario like the most preferred option. I mean, what if one was 26, two were 25%, and one was 24%? That doesn't mean we're going to implement the 26% one. I mean, we have to interpret the results and take it in context of the vision for the future and just, you know, finances and things like that. I mean, I could envision a scenario where maybe the one with the tax increase is not very popular or maybe close. We might want to throw that proposition out to the people to vote on. And if it fails, then we go to a different option. Or maybe that is the preferred option and we try it and it fails and then we have to do something else. So the survey isn't the end all. It is to, as I've said before, to inform us in our decision making. So I just want to make that point clear to the public. I don't know that we need to tweak it that much. I do want to remove 9 and 10. Those questions do annoy, offend people, and I'm one of them. I never answer those questions. I don't like them, and I can understand there are times when you need them, but we don't have a Latino quarter or an African American quarter in town where, you know, you certainly, if there was a distinct area or racial makeup, you certainly would want to know what those people feel. But I think in Sierra Madre, we're all Sierra Madreans, and I just don't see how I don't even think we want to normalize for those two things, because you're dealing with 8-year-old census data. I mean, the demographics may have changed, and you adjust for that, and you could be wrong. So I just say leave it out, and let's not. I don't want people to think that your opinion matters less or more if you're Hispanic or Latino or something else, you know. So I'd like to see those removed.
Oh, sorry.
Could I say something?
Sure.
Address that, please? I'm so sorry. But we do get, when I'm doing surveys, I do get that you're only talking to me because I'm Hispanic, or you're only talking to me because I'm a white female. So I think I just wanted to go along with exactly what you're saying, because Sierra Madre, as all of you on the council know, there's a lot of people who think there's a conspiracy going on, no matter what happens. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you for, thank you.
Okay, well, we're making a big deal out of 9 and 10. I'm not quite sure why. I have filled out, I don't know, 2 or 3 dozen applications for a variety of things, doctor's offices. Heck, you can't order anything anymore, get credit anything else without putting race and ethnicity, and it bugs me a lot. But these people are professionals. There must be a reason they're keeping this in here. And we do have, I don't know where you guys live, on the street I live, we have African Americans, Asians, Hispanics, lots of them actually. I'm a very diverse street. So I don't want to send them the message that we're not sensitive to them as well. I'm really torn on this one. I probably could go either way. But I think my default is leave it alone, go with the professionals. That's all I got.
Okay. So thank you, Councilmember Capocha, and just underscoring the importance that this is a survey. It's not intended to be the be-all, end-all, but it's supposed to be informative for us. So as much as it would be great to add everything in there, it's supposed to give us a sense. So thank you for highlighting that. I will say I want to include the information about community services and how we can incorporate that. I think that's a great recommendation. I didn't think about the underlining, but I'd be interested to hear what NRC has to say about that. I actually think the address for the recreation center or the park is important information to have there. Again, you know, we know what we're talking about because this is what we do. We're expected to know that, and those that are informed and engaged will know where the recreation center is, but I don't want to assume that everyone else does. I am one who, very proud, Filipino American, Asian, I'm out there, I'm involved in so many groups and organizations. I will say when I read this, it really stood out to me. And I just wondered, why do they need to know that if it's about the information of everything else? I get that, you know, how long you've lived here, how many children, what age, and those 2 questions really bothered me, and it's not something that normally bothers me. With that being said, who cares what I feel? The question is, what does it mean? And understanding that it will still be statistically significant and that it will be somewhat, you can still derive some representation. I actually would delete those 2 questions. I want more people to answer it. I don't want people to discard this survey, get to the end going, oh, okay, that's, they're asking that piece, why is that important, and not submit it. Is that the way people react? I do not know, but I would just like to avoid that risk, and my recommendation would be to eliminate 9 and 10, and if we can, get feedback from NRC on those questions and then add reference or address to Recreation Center. So given that, I mean, I hear some folks that are, the 9 and 10, some that are questionable about it, some that are.
Yeah, I mean, I just, look, I can't vote for that for the mere fact that, I mean, we'd be eliminating it because, like we said, individuals are uncomfortable answering it. And I just, to me, I can't throw facts out the window when we're doing things like that. I can't throw science out the window. There's a scientific reason why you have it there. And so I understand if the council wants to go that way. I'm gonna dissent. So.
But this,
luckily
but just to say, this is, according to our survey experts, this doesn't impact any of the scientific.
Well, it does.
So people are confusing the terms of statistical significance versus demographically representative. Will not impact the statistical significance. That's based only on response. It will limit us in some of the information we can extrapolate out of that. With that said, council may feel that the information that could be extrapolated out of that is not important in making the decision. It will be statistically significant based only on the responses. They do recommend, or did recommend, they might not if they were here, but prior to this meeting, they recommended keeping it in because they feel it is the best way to get the best response on what is representative of the entire community. And I don't believe council actually has to vote on this, or we're just taking direction.
Well, sorry, what do you mean? I mean, if we don't vote on this,
so
what are you going to do with 9 and 10?
So based on the conversation we've had tonight, I would eliminate 9 and 10.
Okay. Based on
the comments from council, it appears that the majority of council would like them eliminated.
Okay.
And you would still, so with the direction of today, that you'll still go back to NRC, and then this will not come back to council.
Correct. This is the last time council will see this.
So, and just, should we summarize the other things, that the underlining was an issue?
So, yeah, let me, so what I have is to go back to NRC with the underlining issue to determine if it's leading or indicates bias, to add Sierra Vista Park as a description, in parentheses the address if we have enough room, to add the comment about the community services, and to eliminate questions 9 and 10. At this point, I haven't heard enough to change the language around question 4, significantly reduce library services. We think that's a neutral word. Yeah. We think that we probably have to do the outreach to get people to understand that.
Sorry, and did you also include community services?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Great. I just want to make sure. Okay.
I'm good with that.
All right, so, and there's no vote needed at this time?
That's correct, Mayor.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, now our last item on the agenda is, I'll just hand it over to Mr. City Manager. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 resolutions.
That's correct, and we'll have our Assistant City Clerk.
Assistant City Clerk, Aguilar.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. The next municipal election is scheduled for Tuesday, April 10th, 2018. It is necessary for the City Council to approve a number of resolutions for those elections. There are 5 resolutions presented to the City Council for consideration. It is recommended that the City Council approve resolutions 17-62, 17-63, 17-64, 17-65, and 17-66 respectively. That concludes staff presentation. I am available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Assistant City Clerk Aguilar. Do you have any questions for her at this time?
Let's see here.
So
okay.
Well, we can start with Resolution 17-62 unless there's any recommendations to go in a different order.
So my question for 1762 is with regards to compensation for the city clerk. Is if we didn't pay the city clerk to do this work, could we do the work in-house?
Staff would be capable of managing the election. Yes, Councilmember Capocha.
And how much additional cost would there be? Would there be overtime, part-time hiring, or?
At this time, I don't think I'd be able to answer a specific question on cost. I don't think there would be overtime, but I'm not sure for things like pay, stipend to poll workers, things like that. We have it budgeted, but because we haven't had the conversations, it would be hard to guess that right now.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? So, I guess I'm just confused as to how it works. We hire an outside company to run the election. We have, since I've been on council, right? Martin and Chapman. What would staff be doing or the city clerk be doing that Martin and Chapman aren't doing? So I guess where's the breakdown of roles?
So staff and or city clerk on election day would open the polling sites. We've historically had 3. They'd ensure we have volunteers or workers at the polling sites. They would also monitor the polling sites throughout the day to ensure they were compliant. Prior to election day, there's a wide array of things that have to take place, not only just coordinating with Martin and Chapman, but also the county, ensuring we hit deadlines for items council has to approve.
Would we still, in the scenario of the staff, city staff working, would we still get volunteers from the community to man the polls?
We have not at this point reached out to volunteers to determine if they'd man the polls or what type of or amount of stipend would be necessary. We intend to do that based on direction from this evening. If council is directing staff to undertake that, we will reach out and we'll be able to bring a report back on what that may cost. And I do want to, the stipends are budgeted because we do pay them, so it's a budgeted item, so it wouldn't be, it's outside of the compensation question. The compensation question is for the actual oversight and the pre-work on the election that Martin and Chapman don't complete.
So the stipends we have budgeted, and if we're talking about compensation for the city clerk based on the work that needs to be done, the stipends are not included in that.
The stipend for the poll work is not included in the 7,500 or 7,200, but it is a item in the budget that is budgeted.
Right.
We just have not started the conversation to determine if it's an appropriate amount. We did it based on previous years.
Okay. So do we have a basis for the $7,500 fee? Do we have any idea how that was costed out, or was it costed out at all?
$7,500, I believe, was a negotiation between the previous city clerk and a previous council, though that amount was approved prior to every election. I do not believe it was based on hours or effort, I think it was just a negotiation between the council and the clerk.
So there was, we don't know if there was any accounting, it wasn't like a bill or a itemized statement or anything like that where you're getting something for your fee?
As far as I know, it was just straight pay for overseeing the election.
Has there been work up to today to deal with any election deadlines, any paperwork that has to be filled? Has that been completed by staff or by our elected city clerk?
I know there has been deadlines, and the assistant city clerk has coordinated to date with Martin and Chapman and the county. There are future deadlines coming up, and I believe the responsibility of where that ultimately lies will be determined by the conversation this evening.
Okay.
Just one more question. In looking at our minutes from May, Arcadia, Monrovia, and South Pasadena also have elected city clerks, but they don't pay the city clerk to do the elections. Is that handled internally? by the deputy?
I would be speculating. My speculation is, yes, that would be handled internally if there's not extra pay, but I can't confirm that.
It is handled internally by employees in South Pasadena, which also has an elected city clerk.
Okay, before I open this up to public comment, I just want to make sure we have, we're asking all of our questions for the other resolutions. So do we have any other questions for the next resolution, 17-63?
I have a quick question. Are we, could the city council add a companion measure that goes along with this UUT measure to basically ferret out opinion, some sort of advisory question that if this were to pass, God forbid, what would residents, what would they like us to cut?
You could. It's not too late. The deadline for including another measure on the ballot, if you take this action tonight, is you would need to do that by no later than your first meeting in January, although sooner would be better. So if that's the direction of the council, we could bring something back at the next meeting. What you're talking about would be in the nature of an advisory measure, because we still only have 75-word limit to ask people in the event that the repeal UUT passes, should the council take certain actions, which would be necessary to balance the budget, because you'd be missing that money. I mean, you could have an advisory measure like that, and it's not uncommon to do so when you have a ballot measure that goes to the heart of the revenue that comes into the community, and that revenue may be gone. It's very common to have an advisory measure as a companion to ask the community as an advisory, what do we do now?
And so timing-wise, again, you'd need direction today in order to get it back to us at the next meeting.
Yes, if the council provided that direction, we would bring you something back to consider at the very next meeting. I think it would be better to have, a second shot if you needed it at perfecting the language, or, deciding in the first place if you want a companion measure. So we still have time to do it, but it's a short time. So if you're thinking about that, you will need to give the city manager direction this evening about that.
Okay. Any other questions on any of the 1763-64, 65, or 66?
Yeah.
Straight.
I'm
Go ahead.
On 66, that all 5 council members to submit arguments, but all 5 do not have to. I think we have in the past selected like 2 to do that, correct?
No, didn't we?
You pick 2 to write it up, and all 5 have to sign. I think all 5 have to sign it.
That's what we did.
Or
Yeah.
at least
Yeah, that's correct. The point of that is to provide an opportunity for all 5 to sign.
It just kind of reads that all of us, each of us are going to submit our own argument, and I just wanted to make sure that the public understood it'll be one argument that we all agree to, hopefully.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Any other questions on these 5 resolutions? Okay, seeing none, we will open this up for public comment.
Debbie Sheridan, Valley Vista Drive. I was deputy city clerk for a few years, so I do know what a difficult and involved job it is. And in my opinion, the job of city clerk must stay independent. It is an elected position, and if you decrease the salary of what she's earning, which is pretty meager to begin with, that's really going to be, quite frankly, detrimental to our city. We've got to keep our city clerk. Traditionally, we've only had one candidate. One time we had two candidates over the past 40 years. So please do not reduce any income that she's getting. This is such an important position, and it would really, in my opinion, it would be very detrimental if it became a staff position. So, and by the way, we do need a deputy city clerk again, and I'm wondering if maybe you can advertise that on the website.
We actually have a deputy city clerk. We have
do?
Miss Laura Aguilar has been our deputy city clerk
But
for...
but she works for the city.
Right, but that is her title.
Well, yeah, what I would like to see is somebody who does not work for the city, not because she doesn't do an awesome job, but because I think we need to remain independent that way, just like city council is. And by the way, city council, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Barbara Lee. I'm going to ask the city attorney to clarify. I thought that someone that's in the elected position as city clerk, that's voted in by the public, that makes this conversation null. She's elected by the public for her position, so you really can't discuss her salary. She was elected by the public, not by city council, to nickel and dime. I know you guys spent $16,000 for the library survey, so now it's a drop in the bucket to decide on this elected official whether she's worth a few dollars for an upcoming election that does need to be run smoothly. I have lived here long enough in this town to swear on a hand of Bibles in the courtroom that ballot boxes have been stuffed in the past. So, no, I don't think city staff needs to be mixed in with any type of elections going through town. And I believe in another year or two, the state's going to take over anyway. So why have this conversation now? I think, and that was from Martin and Chapman, that they said the state will be running the elections. Thanks.
Madam City Attorney?
Yes, if I may. The elected city clerk position is not a salaried position. It's similar to your council members who receive a stipend. It's tantamount to a volunteer position. So there is a stipend for the elected city clerk position, and there is a list of statutory duties, but it is a short list for an elected city clerk to perform. Now, if a city wants to pile on extra duties that are outside of what the statute requires for an elected city clerk, that's when you start to talk about additional compensation, because you're asking and requiring your elected city clerk to do more than is required of that office by statute. And conducting elections is a specialized area that, frankly, the county does a lot of the work, and we have to pay them for it. And one of the resolutions that's before the council tonight actually talks about that, actually requests that the county take on the election process, and then they bill the city for it, so it's not free. So there are duties involved with overseeing the election that we can ask the elected city clerk to do, and that's what we would compensate for. The question is whether those duties will be performed by the elected city clerk, or whether traditionally they're going to be performed by the county, or by other volunteers, or by the deputy city clerk. That's the question. So you're trying to determine what those duties are and what would be the appropriate compensation. In your past city clerk, there never was an accounting of the value of those services. That was simply a negotiated amount that happened and then was repeated from one year to the next.
Okay, thank you.
So can I just follow up on that? So the fact that she had made that arrangement with the city over and over again there was no transferability. that's between her and the city, not between any other city clerks.
Right, that the arrangement that Nancy Schollenberger, who was your elected city clerk for many, many years, had with the city for the additional compensation was to compensate her for additional duties or work that fell outside of what the statutory list, it's not a very long list, of actual duties is. And in Nancy's case, she also did some work during the elections, and then she got compensated for that because it was extra work.
Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Alcorn.
Pat Alcorn on Grandview. I would like to follow up with what Debbie Sheridan said, is that I believe that the city clerk, elected city clerk, and the deputy city clerk should be independent of the city hall because they are an at least the city clerk is an elected official. There are hours and hours and hours of work that go into an election. Working as an inspector for the past, I don't know, 10 years on the city elections or 20 years, I know how much work that our past city clerk has done, and I truly don't believe that this could be handled in-house. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment on any of the 5 resolutions presented? Okay, seeing none, we can bring it back for discussion with the City Council.
Yeah, so I'll go. I mean, I think there's a number, the resolutions dealing with the county coming in and so I guess 63, 64, 65, and 66 I have no problem with. I would like to bring back a companion measure. You know, as far as whether the city clerk's going to help administer the election or city staff and what that cost is, I mean, I think one way in which, you know, I'm kind of guided in this conversation is, you know, we're fiduciaries of the people's money. I mean, I think people are somewhat oversimplifying this, but I think that whenever we do anything with taxpayers' money, it has to be we're giving someone or a company, you know, money for a service, okay, and we should be getting something in return. And my question earlier was really getting at what historically, you know, was the city clerk doing versus Martin and Chapman versus the county. What I'm gathering now is that, you know, Martin and Chapman and the county are really running the election, you know, Now, city staff has to put out, from what I can tell, tents or tables, and then they have to bring in volunteers that we pay a stipend to. I can't in good conscience, you know, pay $7,500 for that. I mean, to me, I think that, you know, this is something that, to the extent the city clerk wants to do it, you know, and I don't think that she necessarily has to, I don't think it necessarily comes with a $7,500 price tag. I'm not quite sure why we paid in the past. I mean, that's history. But I don't think anyone's saying that our city clerk shouldn't or necessarily couldn't do this. I think what we're saying is that, is the $7,500 that we've paid really fair? And if I looked, you know, the taxpayers in the eye, would I have a good answer as to why we're paying that $7,500? I haven't heard any real explanation as to where that money went. There has been no accounting for it, and I think going forward, it's hard for me, and maybe I'm just confused and oversimplifying it, I don't know what that money would be for. I don't know what the compensation would be for. If it's for a day of overseeing volunteers, then let's have a conversation about what's just compensation for that? What's just compensation for, you know, finding volunteers and setting up tables and making sure it's running? I don't know if it's $7,500. I mean, that to me is a pretty handsome sum for a day's work. So, you know, my view on this is that if we can handle this in-house and not pay $7,500, I'd love to hear, the counter argument as to why we wouldn't do that. I think the arguments as to we need independence and having our city clerk elected, again, I think that's a separate question. I think you can have an elected city clerk that runs your election that you don't necessarily pay $7,500. I mean, I think other cities seem to be doing that. And I think the deputy city clerks helping that are on salary as staff members, that seems to be the general trend of what other cities are doing. And from what I can tell, there isn't rampant corruption or, elections that you see in, Central Africa or Southeast Asia happening in Arcadia and Monrovia and Pasadena. So, I just think that, some of the speakers that have come to us, I think there's a lot of emotion attached to it because of, friendships with our past city clerk, and I understand that. But I think, we have to kind of sift through that and really decide what is best for the city. So in my view, again, seeing the options, which is paying $7,500 or not, when the services seem to be, from what I can tell, pretty minimal, I wouldn't vote to pay for $7,500. So that's where I am. I'm happy to be convinced otherwise.
Thank you.
Well, I would just say that this was negotiated in the past, and I don't know what your expectations are, Madam City Clerk, but
I don't have to help. I mean, fine with me. You can't understand the work that it entails until you are in that person's shoes. And this is more than volunteer. It takes so much time. And now I haven't even been in. I just do things. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get this done and that. And if Laura can handle it, good luck to you. I mean, the first time I came, you guys argued about my $650. And when I break it down, the list, it's about $2.50 an hour. I've never made that in my life.
yeah, it holds the same for the council. When I first got on the council, I make the same money that I made when I was 16 years old at minimum wage.
But you have a voice on the council.
That is true.
I don't.
Yeah, but I ran for council also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll run against you.
How-
I do have a master's degree,
Oh, great. Yeah. Okay, I was just giving you the argument to negotiate if you felt you'd tell us what services you would provide, and we'd assess the value of it.
I'm getting emails, and I have to answer these emails about how they are expecting, November 16th, they were expecting a list of all the candidates for April.
Mm-hmm.
So I get bombarded with emails that I have to answer and I have to send in, just like the 700 forms. I was here Christmas last year with Director Medina, Assistant City Manager. We were the only two because I was training on that computer system. And I got it all done, and no one paid me or brought me water or, I wanted to learn it, I wanted to get it done, and it was done.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments for discussion? Any motions?
I just want to follow up on what Councilmember Capochi said. Are you saying that you don't want to give us some kind of an estimate of what this would cost? You would like to charge us, or you just don't want to do it?
I have no idea. Nancy didn't train me to do, but I'm sure it entails more than expected or judged.
Well, here we're here
So-
to talk about it so that we can make this work. We want our elections to be run properly. We want city clerk has been elected by the public to be comfortable in her position.
Mhm.
We value you. So what I think Councilmember Capochi's question is perfectly valid. What, given the fact you have imperfect knowledge, so do we. I don't think anybody can tell us exactly what former city clerk Schollenberger was doing. I mean, we have some general statements. For all I know, she was worth that, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. So can you give us some kind of an estimate? Madam City Clerk?
I can't. It's a lot of work. It's more work than, and it's not rocket science work. I wish it was. But it's more tedious work, or doing this and then emailing and organizing, and if I don't get the stipend, I'm sure Laura will, because then she's going to be caught up doing everything in overtimes.
I think we're just talking really about the election right now. And
Right.
yeah, do you have, right, because, and I will push back a little bit on Councilmember Harabedian. There are a lot of things that go on for the election prior to Election Day that require a lot of hours and organization and responding to the county and responding to candidates' requests. And a lot of hours do go into that. It sounds like maybe you don't have the time to do that, so that's what we're kind of trying to gauge here. Is that something that you can devote the time and the accountability to be in the city hall and be able to conduct those, or should we go in-house and ask our deputy city clerk to do that? Like, you were asked to do a deadline by, you said November 16th. Were you able to meet that deadline and submit the papers that you needed for that?
There are no papers to be submitted because we're going into April. So I asked Laura, there are no papers. So she says, well, we have to tell them we have nothing until January.
Okay.
So yes.
So do you, with your job and your children, is this something that you would have time to do? Is run the election starting, now up through the election process?
I think so. I don't know what it all, I mean, for 7,500, being here 30 hours a week would be a little underpaid and a little too much. When Laura's getting paid well, then, that's what I'm trying to answer your question.
I don't know, maybe I'm confused about, I feel like we're talking about two separate issues, like the election piece and then the regular ongoing duty. So just so that I understand, we are focusing on the election and what the time you would require for that.
Mayor, if I could, I think the central theme is in accounting. We didn't have an accounting before. Perhaps we could work to come up with an accounting on how an election's operated this year. And set the cap at 7,500, bring the accounting back, and then set that for elections going forward.
Another issue was Chapman. They were supposed to be training us on the elections, and they canceled that. So I'm kind of out in the.
When you say they were supposed to be training, who
they had
training? Did you set up a training with them, or they were going to do other city?
They stopped, right? What did they say? They haven't scheduled anything, and they don't plan to for. They were supposed to in October, and they didn't.
They were supposed to do a training for all the area city
all
clerks.
these areas. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Mr. City Manager, going back to what you were stating, that the recommendation is to come back with accounting?
No, I think we would go do the accounting this year as we move through it, have council approve compensation not to exceed 7,500, and after we have the accounting, it would give us some basis in future election years on the amount, type, and value of the work that was completed. Trying to find a common ground. I don't think either side is getting the answers that they want.
Well, I'm a little confused here because I'm not getting from you, Madam City Clerk, that you want to do this and that 7,500 would even be enough. And this is a very critical thing. Elections are the backbone of our democracy. We have to make sure they're on time and they're done above board, and all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It's very serious business, as I'm sure you're aware. Mm-hmm. So I really think we need to get a stronger commitment from you tonight about your desire to do this or not, and your willingness to make a commitment to it. And if you are willing to do that, then I think what the city manager is suggesting, I might be able to support that. But I want to make certain that you will find the training you need, that you will meet the deadlines that you have to face, and that you will seek help wherever you need to get that help from.
I can commit if I have staff on board with me. Sometimes I feel like we're not on the same page. They're going behind me, or the list is short when the list isn't short. You know, I'm just trying to do the best I can, and I'm not getting answers fast enough. So if I can get those answers and be on board with Laura and staff, then of course. But that's why I'd rather be at home. If I'm not getting that support, then I'll just do things at home. But like Mark and Chapman, we haven't been able to get training with them. And I know Laura has told me last, maybe December, is that when they still haven't. So I'm a little lost.
Look, I mean, I think we're all lost at this point. You know, my view again is, I think our city clerk has a fair argument. She doesn't want to do it for compensation that's less than she views fair. And I'm of the view that, you know, again, we shouldn't be paying more than we need to. So in some ways, I think we see eye to eye. I mean, I think what was done in the past was done in the past, and I don't think that we should make someone work for less money than they think they deserve. So, you know, my view is we're at an impasse here, and I think that we have a solution, which is we have Martin and Chapman that's going to run it. The county helps. We have a deputy city clerk. To the extent the city clerk wants to help, we can do that. We can do the accounting and everything, but I also don't want to put her down a path to where she's doing work and then she doesn't know how much she's getting paid. I mean, I don't think that's constructive. So, I mean, I'm not trying to minimize, and to Mayor Pro Tem's point, I was not trying to say that nothing happened on the election beforehand. The city manager said that deputy city clerk had been handling all that. So I think that's the point being, is that what we'd be compensating for, in my view, was the day of election stuff. I may be wrong. But again, I don't know why we're twisting arms to necessarily go forward with something that it seems like both parties don't want. So I appreciate the offer, but I just don't, it seems like it's not really what either party wants. So
I'm going to just make this real simple. We've got our neighbors, and our city attorney is the city attorney for one of the neighbors that has an elected city official, and they don't pay that, or elected city clerk, and they don't pay the clerk to run the election. I'd like to get a little bit more mainstreamed. I don't have a compelling argument why Sierra Madre has to be different. So I'd like to move to that model, where the city clerk is just like the other elected officials here and gets paid the stipend and does the work that is that they're chartered to do by statute. And anything above and beyond that, we as a council then hold our city manager accountable to be sure that the work gets done, that we have a fair election. So it's real simple to me.
Madam
That's
City
my
Attorney, were you going to answer a question or comment?
Yeah, through the chair, I was just going to offer that running an election is specialized knowledge, and it's really unfair for our elected city clerk to be expected to have this knowledge. This is the kind of these are the kind of services that professional city clerks, and yes, they are employees, who receive a lot of training over the years, know how to do these services. And that's why in every city that I know, this city has been an exception, but then Nancy was with you for many years and learned it over time. And it's not really a fair expectation to expect your city clerk to immediately be able to say, yes, I can do all of these things, because she's telling you she's willing to do them, but she hasn't been trained. In fact, she doesn't, someone would have to train her. She would have to get that training. Because of that, she doesn't have a sense of whether $7,500 or any number is fair compensation. And I don't think anybody is intending to put her in that position. It's unfortunate that there has been no class that she could attend to at least try to get this information through Martin and Chapman, but we're down to the wire here. Right. And so it may be that this year you have your deputy city clerk do it, and maybe your city clerk can learn some of this so that the next election she'll know it. That's one.
Can I say something?
Yes.
And Laura's not trained also in the elections. So we're kind of both on the same boat.
So
I think that Laura has been helping Nancy over the years, but that, she could speak better to that.
So let me go ahead and reel this in, and just, I want to, we can do two things. I would recommend that we make a motion on 1763 through 66 with the guidance of adding, or for staff to come back.
The companion.
With a companion measure. Is that,
was that a motion? I'm
Isn't
sorry.
it what was the phraseology?
Advisory
measuring.
measure.
Okay. So I'll make that motion to approve 17-63, 64, 65, 66 with staff coming back to the next meeting with advisory measure language.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that carries unanimously. Now we'll bring back to 17-62, and I know this is a very heated discussion that we're having here, and I agree.
It is awkward.
It is, and I agree. I think there's history here. There's also friendships and emotions that are connected in, and it's really important for us to look at this very objectively, making sure we're looking at fiscally what makes sense as what's needed, and how to move forward, because it's hard to undo 20 plus years of history. So given that, is there any sense, I hear some very strong opinions as to not having any type of compensation, and if someone would like to make a motion on that or make another motion.
I think
there's more conversation.
the advantage of having our deputy city clerk take this over is she does have some experience. I don't think she has the expertise that Nancy Schellenberger had, that's for sure. But she is a full-time salaried individual, and so she can be dedicated to this, depending upon how the city manager wants to manage his employees, and probably get caught up to speed pretty quick. Our city clerk, on the other hand, has a life to lead, and a lot of these factors are, X factors for you right now, and you're not going to get paid to be trained. And so it seems to me, at least for this year, maybe not. Maybe we can come back and revisit it in 2 years for the next election. Seems like the idea of going with the deputy city clerk handling this, with the city clerk involved. And kind of with the idea that city clerk is going to learn by doing, and just suspending the stipend until we can figure out if and when we want to pay the city clerk to do the election. My only concern here, and I really do, when I hear the goal, the running down to the wire, I'm concerned because it seems to me that if we don't get this right, and we miss deadlines, then we have not done our constitutional responsibility to hold an election, and that is unforgivable. The public would never forgive us for that, and for good reason. So I think we do have to make some kind of decision, as tough as it is.
So I wanted to review what was in statute and see, what are the items there, and, how the municipal elections fall into it. And it is part of the expectations. I am concerned. It was my understanding that we missed a deadline. I could be wrong with that. But even more reason that I want to make sure that we are staying on top of things, as Councilmember Goss had stated, there's no forgiveness if we're going to mess up on an election. So given that Martin Chapman and that we have the county that are involved in this, I would love to see how the city clerk continues to be involved with this, because again, it's part of the expectations and responsibilities. I would be open to maybe an additional month's stipend, but I mean, that's not a real number, and I don't think that will please anybody. But I also too find it hard to justify the $7,500 for managing the election in addition to the regular responsibilities. So I would be in favor of not including a compensation if that's where the rest of the council is going, and/or considering another month's stipend if that's worth any weight at all.
At this point in time, because we are so close to the deadlines and we don't have an elected city clerk who is trained in this, the big difference is that Laura is our deputy city clerk is a full-time employee, and she can also be held accountable. If deadlines are missed, if things aren't going correctly, that we have someone that we can hold accountable. So I'm in agreement that for this particular election year, that we don't do the stipend and put the sole responsibility on the elected city clerk, but have some shared responsibility.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, it's fine. And again, I think if our city clerk, I think to the extent that she's busy and doesn't want to do it, I don't think she should feel compelled to do it. So, again, I know we're talking about shared responsibility, but if she doesn't want to do it, she doesn't have to do it.
Okay. All right.
Before a motion is made and you take a vote, what we'll be looking at then is on Section 12 of Resolution 17-62, I heard the mayor suggest that maybe an extra month stipend. I mean, we could keep Section 12 and fill in a number there with the understanding that at least your city clerk would be, we're compensating or something to learn the process so that in the future, or if she doesn't, because it is a lot of work, if she doesn't want to do it at all, we can just delete Section 12, but whatever you decide, it's one or the other. We need to fill in that blank with a number, such as an additional month's compensation, or just strike Section 12.
Okay, because there's additional information in Resolution 1762, and you have an item 12 there that does indicate that an amount has to be filled in. Yes. Okay, so eliminate altogether and/or add an amount there. Yes. Okay. Noted.
All right, well, I think we should eliminate Section 12.
Yeah, I agree. With Section 12 it is?
Yes.
You want me to read it? Section 12
no,
says.
I'm there.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah. Let me see.
Okay, do we hear a motion for approving Resolution 17-62 with a modification of eliminating Section 12 on the resolution?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and that passes and carries unanimously. Okay. And I do want to apologize, Madam City Clerk. I know that was a very awkward conversation, but I appreciate your candidness. So thank you.
Do you really need me?
You're elected. So, given that, do we have any new items for future agendas?
No.
Not for me.
Okay.
Right now.
Hearing none, and
I do have one thing. If we were going to start in December, we were talking about doing some sort of education regarding the library and the survey and getting that information out. Will you be bringing back anything as far as a calendar, any FAQs that are going out?
I think we'll work with our commissions.
Okay.
And let them lead that charge, and then staff can remain neutral on it as we'll be implementing whatever council decides.
Perfect.
okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and that passes also unanimously. Thank you, everyone.